After a night of passion, he was completely captivated. The clothes of both the man and woman were scattered across the floor. In their passion, a torn bra was thrown on top of a white shirt. Fu Shilv emerged from the bathroom, only wrapped in a towel around his waist. His foot brushed against the lace edge of the bra, and his whole body was immersed in the whirlpool of light. One more time. On the large bed beside him, Sheng Youxia, who had just experienced an intense pleasure, looked up to see him down the thick Chinese medicine in one gulp. Even with his frown, he still looked handsome, Sheng Youxia thought. If she could never see him again, would that mean she wouldn't have to love this dog of a man anymore? Her nose felt slightly sour as she buried her face into the bed, trying to suppress the bitterness. Love is a knife. Whoever loves first will be the one to suffer. Fu Shilv set the bowl down and moved toward Sheng Youxia. The medicine was too bitter next, she would need something sweet. The warmth of his palm made her skin tighten. Another round tonight. This aphrodisiac worked so quickly. Was he sure he wouldn't collapse from exhaustion? She kindly said, "Actually, you don't have to push yourself like this. 30 minutes isn't a short time. And, you know, medicine has its side effects, be careful. Exhaustion could kill you." What kind of medicine did he think he had taken? Fu Shilv's face darkened, his tone displeased as he raised his voice. "Who's forcing anything? That's cold medicine." When Fu Shilv exerted force, the bed creaked under them, and Sheng Youxia was barely able to keep up. Her newly worn nightgown was tangled in a mess from his rough handling. "Could you be gentler?" Millimeter, Sheng Youxia's lips were sealed by his kiss. The light was bright, illuminating the desire in his eyes, like a wild, dominant beast, pressing down on her, ravaging her, as if he wanted to tear her apart and consume her whole. A ringtone from the nightstand mixed in with their humid, sticky breaths. Fu Shilv, still not finished, looked at Sheng Youxia's slim waist. His hands reached over, perfectly cupping her waist, leaving behind marks from where he had gripped her in passion. The ringtone wouldn't stop, continuing to disturb them. Fu Shilv grabbed the phone, his movements pausing as he saw the caller ID. His hand quickly covered Sheng Youxia's mouth as he answered the call. Her body was still trembling as she watched his arms brace above her, muscles tensed. But suddenly, her vision blurred. Sheng Youxia remembered what the doctor had said: her sight could go at any time, and she needed to get a corneal transplant as soon as possible. "Dr. Fu, my eyes hurt so much. Can I take painkillers?" It was a soft, fragile woman's voice. "I've already found a cornea. The surgery can be arranged immediately." That cold, distant, and dignified Fu Shilv, it turned out he wasn't incapable of being gentle, it was just a side of him he had never shown her. The woman on the other end of the line couldn't hide her excitement. "So, I'll be able to see you soon." Sheng Youxia's body stiffened. The sound of Fu Shilv's breath in her ear was heavy, and the air was thick with desire. "Millimeter." She heard his quiet response. "But I overheard the nurse saying this cornea is for someone else." Sheng Youxia stared at his face, so close yet still blurry. Fu Shilv's brow slightly furrowed. Those nurses loved to gossip. He spoke with a cold, detached tone. "Your condition is more urgent. Let others wait." Sheng Youxia's lips trembled, feeling like a death sentence had been passed on her. With Fu Shilv's intervention, of course, he could get the cornea. But did he even realize that the someone else he spoke of was her? That cornea was originally meant for her. Sheng Youxia had waited for 6 months, and it had taken so long to get the cornea, but Fu Shilv just took it away. Afterward, the man got up from the bed, buttoning up his shirt. His back was covered in deep scratch marks. "Fu Shilv, if my eyesight goes too, and I need surgery, who would you care for first?" As her words settled, she watched Fu Shilv turn around, a shadow approaching. He grabbed her chin. "Are you blind?" She swallowed hard. "I said, if. Then we'll talk about it once you're blind." If anyone said Sheng Youxia was blind, Fu Shilv would never believe it. She had just been staring intently at him before. Fu Shilv fastened his shirt buttons one by one. "Don't try to play these petty games with me. Liang Yanwei isn't as scheming as you, she can't compete with you." It seemed that seeing the lack of light in her eyes like a dry well was making him lose interest. Fu Shilv reached over again, cupping her face in his hands. His thumb stroked her delicate cheek. "But, if you do go blind, I'll still treat you." Fu Shilv saw a flicker of light in her eyes. He smiled and leaned in closer, but, you'll have to wait behind Liang Nianwei. Fu Shilv didn't stay the night. After driving away, Mrs. Feng entered the room. Miss Sheng Youxia was sitting on the edge of the bed, still not fully dressed. Mrs. Feng hurried to drape a nightgown over her. Mr. Fu is gone. I know. Didn't you talk to him about your eyes? Sheng Youxia felt weak. He said he'd take care of Liang Nianwei first. Mrs. Feng, who had been with Sheng Youxia since her family's house, felt a deep affection for her. She muttered something under her breath, but miss, do you really want to compete with Liang Nianwei? This isn't about competing. The cornea was always meant for me. Mrs. Feng looked worried. If Mr. Fu steps in, I'm afraid you won't be able to match him. Sheng Youxia lifted her eyes, her eyelids slightly red. Mrs. Feng grew anxious. You can't cry, your eyes won't be able to take it. Don't cry. Mrs. Feng looked at her, and in Sheng Youxia's eyes, there was only a flicker of light, dim and unstable. Chapter 2, this time, are you serious? The next day, Sheng Youxia went to the hospital for a follow-up exam. She didn't know how much longer her eyes would hold up. While waiting for the elevator, she was walking quickly, but accidentally bumped into someone, dropping everything in her hands onto the floor. As Sheng Youxia bent down to pick it up, she never expected to run into Fu Shilv here. Shouldn't he be at his washing hospital on a workday? Fu Shilv's gaze moved from her to the ground, where there were plenty of medical forms. What are you doing here? Seeing that his attention was still on the medical forms, Sheng Youxia quickly squatted down to gather them up. She was nervous, trying hard to suppress her shaking hands as she stuffed the forms into her bag. Didn't you say Grandpa has been urging you? Since we haven't had any luck yet, I came for an exam. Fu Shilv's sharp eyes studied her face. Then why didn't you go to washing hospital? The fertility department there was among the top in the country. Sheng Youxia searched for an excuse. I was afraid of running into your colleagues and embarrassing myself. Fu Shilv stepped closer to her. If you're sick, get treated. What's there to be embarrassed about? What if the exam shows I'm fine? Then everyone will know the problem is with you. The expression on Fu Shilv's face tightened. He was quite good at deflecting others, but he had been feeling pressure from his family lately. I happen to be free. I'll take you to washing hospital for an exam. Sheng Youxia felt like she was shooting herself in the foot. No need. I'm done. I'm perfectly normal. Really? Fu Shilv extended his hand in front of her. Let me see the results. Sheng Youxia was speechless. Luckily, Fu Shilv didn't press further. I don't trust other hospitals. He stepped out of the way and then turned back to look at her, his gaze impatient. Are you coming or not? With no other choice, Sheng Youxia reluctantly followed. With a phone call from Fu Shilv, the examination room at the hospital was cleared. The doctor in charge of the exam was very polite. Mrs. Fu, please take off your pants and lie on the bed. Sheng Youxia glanced at the man standing to the side. Fu Shilv's features were striking, his natural handsomeness apparent. As he sat on a chair by the bed, he gave off no hint of arrogance. You should pull the curtain. She's embarrassed. The doctor laughed lightly. Are you still shy with your husband? Luckily, Sheng Youxia was wearing a skirt, but when she removed her underwear, the fabric brushed against her thighs. Fu Shilv's throat felt dry as he watched her lie down behind the curtain, her legs bent. That position. The lighter in his hand clicked open with a sharp sound, and he forced himself to steady his nerves. The doctor conducted a very thorough examination, and Sheng Youxia nervously clutched the bedsheet. Mrs. Fu, relax. It will only take a moment. Millimeter. She didn't know if it was due to discomfort or something else, but she let out a shaky sound. Sheng Youxia tightened her legs. Fu Shilv's entire body tensed. Do a proper exam. It's been a year. Why can't you get pregnant? The doctor didn't dare slack off, and the equipment was set up. Sheng Youxia, who hated these exams, was feeling quite worn out. Some of the reports won't be ready until this afternoon. I'll call you when they are in. Sheng Youxia put her underwear back on, still feeling some discomfort. She heard the sound of a chair being pushed back, followed by the curtain being pulled open. In a hurry, Sheng Youxia lowered her skirt, but Fu Shilv grabbed her arm, trying to help her up. She thought of the phone call from last night and suddenly felt disgusted. Fu Shilv was tall, and her gaze fell on his slender fingers. These were the hands of a surgeon, saving lives and healing the sick, but Sheng Youxia knew this man. Inside and out, he was made of ruthless determination. She pulled her arm away from his help. I'm done now. It's your turn. What? Can't get pregnant. It must be my problem. Maybe you're the one who can't do it. You took medicine last night. Fu Shilv's handsome face darkened, and the doctor nearby was clearly taken aback. No way. Didn't they say men with big noses were strong? Fu Shilv was furious. With his status, he couldn't afford to argue with her in front of his colleagues about whether he was capable or not. That would be too embarrassing. His coldness was evident on his face as he turned and walked out. Sheng Youxia quickly tidied herself up, thanked the doctor, and left. In the hallway, the bright light shone through, and Sheng Youxia heard a nurse greeting Fu Shilv. Hello, Director Fu. He responded lightly. But as Sheng Youxia lifted her gaze, everything suddenly became blurry. She could only make out a tall shadow now. Sheng Youxia felt a little panicked. She was afraid Fu Shilv would notice. Hurriedly, she took 2 steps forward and grabbed his hand. Fu Shilv turned to look at her. Weren't you being tough just now? Even though they were so close, Sheng Youxia could no longer make out the expression on his face. She forced a smile. We're at least husband and wife. Holding hands, does it cost you anything? As soon as her words fell, Fu Shilv pulled his hand away. She heard his footsteps quickening as he seemed to walk faster. Sheng Youxia hurried to follow, but her shoulder bumped into someone. She heard the loud crash of something hitting the ground. The family member of the patient, who she had bumped into, was furious. Are you blind? I prepared this meal, and now it's all spilled. Are you blind or what? Sheng Youxia could barely make out the blurry figure, and she dared not move further. She heard footsteps returning. It was Fu Shilv's voice. Watch your mouth. The patient's family member snapped back, she bumped into me. The hallway is so wide, how could she not see me? Sheng Youxia's breathing became shallow, and her vision blurred again. Fu Shilv took out his wallet and casually pulled out a few red bills. The patient's family member wanted to say something more, but upon seeing Fu Shilv's cold expression, they wisely shut up. Let us go. Fu Shilv said coldly. Sheng Youxia wanted to grab his hand again, but her fingers met nothing. Her foot stepped on the spilled food, and soon, greasy footprints appeared on the tiles. The person who had received the money muttered under their breath, "Can't you see?" Sheng Youxia took a few more steps but then bumped into someone else. She winced in pain but didn't make a sound. She vaguely saw a row of deep blue chairs against the wall. She walked over and sat down. Fu Shilv noticed she hadn't followed and frowned. He looked at her. Aren't you leaving? Sheng Youxia closed her eyes. I just want to sit for a while. If Fu Shilv cared even a little bit about her, he would have noticed something was off. But sadly, this man didn't have her in his heart. Sheng Youxia leaned back slightly, her gaze fixed on the spot where Fu Shilv had been standing. Could you sit with me for a while? She didn't know if her eyesight would improve later, and she was afraid to be alone here. Just then, Fu Shilv's phone rang. Sheng Youxia heard him pick it up. Hello. A woman's voice came from the other end. Director Fu, Nianwei's eyes are hurting badly. She secretly took several painkillers. I'll be right there. Sheng Youxia tried to say, don't go, but before she could speak, Fu Shilv was already preparing to leave. He hung up and, noticing her sitting there, he said coldly, if you don't want to leave, sit here. I'll take you home later. His words were sharp and indifferent, each one like a dagger. Sheng Youxia's eyes brimmed with moisture, and her eyeballs stung painfully. Fu Shilv. Nearby, someone, perhaps pitying her, whispered, stop shouting. He has already gone. Sheng Youxia glanced around. It felt like she had been abandoned here. Without her sight, she couldn't even move properly. After what felt like an eternity, Sheng Youxia regained some clarity. She called Feng Mar to come pick her up. It wasn't until evening that Fu Shilv returned. He brought with him the scent of the hospital. After removing his jacket, he saw that Sheng Youxia was still awake. When did you get back? Did you come looking for me? Fu Shilv's fingers rested on his sleeve as he slowly unbuttoned it. Millimeter. I came back on my own. Before heading to the bathroom, Fu Shilv glanced at the woman on the bed. The light from her shoulder cast down, accentuating the coolness of her brow. It was almost as though he was explaining, there were 2 major surgeries today, so I came back late. Sheng Youxia casually replied, oh. After showering, Fu Shilv got into bed, lifting the blanket. The cold air seeped in as he came closer, his leg brushing against hers. Sheng Youxia instinctively pulled away. Nianwei's surgery, did you perform it yourself? Fu Shilv looked troubled. He picked up a pack of cigarettes from the nightstand. He rarely smoked, but Sheng Youxia sat up as the pale blue flame flared. Fu Shilv's features were obscured by the smoke. He exhaled and answered, yes. Then why are you so worried? You're a genius in the medical field, this was just a minor surgery for you. Sheng Youxia had often fantasized if Fu Shilv were the one to treat her eyes personally, would her chances of recovery be higher? Unfortunately, the cornea only had 1 pair. Fu Shilv's eyes locked onto hers, and the oppressive feeling grew. How do you know about Nianwei? Sheng Youxia brushed a lock of hair from her face. I didn't hear it from anyone. I just suspect some paparazzi has a crush on you, so they are constantly following your tabloid stories. Fu Shilv shot her a sidelong glance. Sheng Youxia smirked, little dog. His hand tightened around the cigarette. Who are you calling a dog? The paparazzi, of course. I'm the one who steps forward to clear your name every now and then. It's exhausting. Fu Shilv sneered. Aren't you used to it by now? This man was truly a dog through and through. She must have been blind to love him for all these years. The scent of smoke filled the air, and Sheng Youxia waved her hand. Though Fu Shilv smoked occasionally, this was the first time he'd done so in their room, on her bed. Are you serious this time? Chapter 3, Meeting the Rival. What? Fu Shilv stood up, extinguishing his cigarette. Do you really like Liang Nianwei? The man, with broad shoulders and long legs, stood with his back to her. I don't know. She's pretty different. Sheng Youxia didn't hear the word like from his mouth, but she knew it was over. When a man starts thinking like this, it means his heart has already stirred, right? I once did a survey. Many patients think losing their sight is more cruel than losing limbs. Fu Shilv's voice broke through the silence. Sheng Youxia's voice wavered, tinged with a slight tremor. She didn't know why Fu Shilv was saying this. Was he trying to make her sympathize with Liang Nianwei? Yeah, if you can't see, you really are useless. Sheng Youxia turned off the light and lay down on the bed. She wiped the corner of her eye, the frustration and pain in her heart almost suffocating her. She hardly slept the whole night. She had to see Liang Nianwei with her own eyes, to see the woman who had remained unshaken for years, and understand who could have managed to crack a corner of this icy facade. 2 days later, Sheng Youxia met Liang Nianwei at a pizza shop downstairs from the hospital. See that? The one with the black straight hair, no makeup. Sheng Youxia's best friend, Tang Hui, pointed excitedly at a figure not far away. I don't think she's even fully developed. She doesn't even have breasts. Is this the type your food dog likes? Sheng Youxia's chest tightened, a feeling she couldn't quite explain bubbling up. Tang Hui was indignant, clearly believing Fu Shilv's brain was full of grass. I had someone keep watch for several days to catch this opportunity. Xia, your food dog seems really into her. He has been protecting her well. If it weren't for her eye condition worsening and her being hospitalized, I'm not sure I would have gotten a chance to snap a picture. Liang Nianwei was completely blind. She ate her food with extreme caution. She looked very young, innocent, and clean, a pure little lotus. Sheng Youxia didn't expect her rival to be like this. Tang Hui, where do you think I lost? Tang Hui immediately turned around, eyes filled with sympathy. She wrapped her arm around Sheng Youxia's shoulder. Lost? Are you kidding me? My Xia is drop-dead gorgeous, unparalleled in beauty. Fu Shilv is the one who is blind. Sheng Youxia and Liang Nianwei were completely different types, 2 extremes. Tang Hui was in love with Sheng Youxia's appearance, a kind that even surgery couldn't replicate. Xia, have you considered this? Fu Shilv's circle doesn't have women like this. Tang Hui said, choosing her words carefully. I heard Liang Nianwei had a hard time even getting an appointment with Fu Shilv. Her family isn't well off, and she couldn't afford the surgery. When she left, she bowed to Fu Shilv and thanked him, saying she wouldn't go through with the treatment. These were all things Tang Hui had learned from the nurses. She lowered her voice, and even cursed, "Damn, your food dog has probably never seen such a fragile little flower, and now he just." Sheng Youxia's eyes grew cold, her gaze fixed on the cup in her hand. The soda in the cup continued to bubble. "So, he has fallen for her." Tang Hui wanted to offer some comfort, but hesitated. "It's not really falling for her. It's nothing major yet, probably just novelty." Sheng Youxia had liked Fu Shil for 3 years. The two families were about to be married. Fu Shil had thought it was all because she had used every trick in the book. Now, out of nowhere, a girl like this appears. Doesn't that just make Sheng Youxia seem like the villain? People couldn't handle comparisons. "I can't stand this. I'm going to teach her a lesson." Sheng Youxia quickly grabbed Tang Hui's arm. "No, wait. Just bear with it." Tang Hui helplessly sat back down. Sheng Youxia's gaze remained fixed on Liang Nianwei. "My chances with the cornea transplant were slim from the start, and if I confront Liang Nianwei directly, I'm afraid Fu Shil will start suspecting me," Sheng Youxia said. There were some things she could only do in secret. Tang Hui looked worried. "But are we really a match for Fu Shil?" "Of course not, that would be like an egg trying to fight a stone. That's why we're working in the shadows. I can't negotiate with Fu Shil. I can only resort to taking action." Tang Hui was well aware of her entire plan. It was risky, more dangerous than parachuting from a great height and hoping to survive. "I'm just afraid that even if we do manage to take action, Fu Shil might still settle the score with you afterward." Sheng Youxia's gaze fell on Liang Nianwei, who was smiling. The path ahead of her was bright, and she was obviously happy. Sheng Youxia curled her lips into a mocking smile. "By the time that happens, the surgery will be over. Do you think I'll still be afraid of him settling the score with me? What, is he going to dig my eyes out again?" Tang Hui, hearing this, gave her a thumbs up. "Xia, I love your attitude. There were so many women who tried to get close to Fu Shil in the past, but didn't they all fall at your feet?" Sheng Youxia, a rich girl raised by her stepmother, was no naive, sweet girl. Tang Hui added, "Go for it." Suddenly, it seemed like Sheng Youxia realized where she had lost. The spotlight was too intense, too arrogant, not humble enough. Those qualities, when compared to Liang Nianwei, became fatal flaws. Some people, as soon as they stand there, naturally trigger a man's protective instinct. Liang Nianwei was just such a person. Back at Shizibei, Sheng Youxia spent the entire afternoon lost in thought. That evening, Fu Shil returned. When he saw her sitting there, motionless, a slight displeasure crossed his face. "Aren't you going to pack up? We're leaving." "Where are we going?" "Jixing Tang's birthday. I told you about it a couple of days ago. We're supposed to go together." The Ji family had been closely connected to the Fu family for generations. If Sheng Youxia didn't attend, it would likely spread to the Fu family's ears. Fu Shil, with his long legs, walked up to Sheng Youxia. She looked up, meeting his gaze. What a striking face he had. He had just returned from the hospital. He took off his glasses, his eyes now fully exposed, sharper than before. From the refined gentleman, he had successfully evolved into the well-dressed beast. Neither was good. Fu Shil lowered his gaze. "Where did you go today?" Sheng Youxia was slightly startled, thinking he had found out. "I went out for tea with a friend." The man looked at her, his eyes scanning her face back and forth. "That lipstick color is too dark. You should try something lighter." Sheng Youxia held back her words. Otherwise, she might have told him to go to hell. So what if Liang Nianwei doesn't wear makeup? She smiled and nodded. "Okay." After Fu Shil changed clothes, he took Sheng Youxia out. Despite being a surgeon, Fu Shil was surprisingly wild behind the scenes. After dinner, Sheng Youxia followed him to Royal Hongju, a nightclub. The women at the club, seeing money and power, naturally didn't let such an opportunity slip by. Fu Shil, however, stayed relatively composed, sitting next to Sheng Youxia without calling anyone over to drink with him. With many people sitting on the sofa, their legs were pressed close together. Sheng Youxia could feel the heat radiating from his body, the warmth of it seeping through his suit pants. As they were drinking, Sheng Youxia suddenly noticed Ji Xingtang leaning over, a smile playing on his lips. "Sis-in-law, what day is it today?" Sheng Youxia was confused. The eighth. Har har har. Laughter erupted in the private room, as if they had just heard a joke. Ji Xingtang patted Fu Shilv on the shoulder, his words awkward and out of place. Then tonight, you can't drink. Director Fu has been working hard all day and is working overtime tonight. So pitiful, we must sympathize with you. Fu Shilv immediately yanked Ji Xingtang's arm and told him to leave. Sheng Youxia's intuition told her that something was going on between them, and it had to be related to her. Chapter 4, Giving him the medicine. Sis-in-law, wait a bit longer, we'll let Director Fu go soon. Sheng Youxia felt uneasy, but couldn't pinpoint why. It's fine, I'm just enjoying the moment. I'll leave only when I'm drunk, she replied. She knew that as long as she was there, the topic wouldn't go any deeper. At some point, Sheng Youxia found an opportunity to get up, saying she was going to the restroom. She waited near the private room door for a while and saw a woman coming out. Sheng Youxia called her over and handed her a thick wad of cash. Help me with something. Without a word, the woman took the money, didn't even count it, and stuffed it in her pocket. Sheng Youxia waited for what felt like a long time before the woman finally came back to find her. I recorded it on my phone. Make sure you don't let them know. Sheng Youxia took the phone and found a quiet spot to listen. She pressed play, and the voices started to spill out. Xingtang, why did you ask that just now? Is the 8th some special day? Ji Xingtang sounded unusually excited, almost as if a soundtrack was about to follow. You'd have to ask Director Fu about that. Has he been working hard these days? There was a sound of someone smoking. Fu Shilv didn't say anything, but Sheng Youxia knew it was him. Don't keep us in suspense, we're curious. Tell us. Ji Xingtang's voice continued with enthusiasm, his gossiping tone obvious. Our Director Fu and his wife plan their nights together very carefully, never wasting them. I've also learned something 3 days before and after ovulation, totaling 7 days, is called the ovulation period. Sheng Youxia's ears began to buzz, and the shadows before her eyes blurred. During that time, the chances of pregnancy are high. After the ovulation period, Fu Shilv absolutely touched that Sheng Youxia. For this, I've given her a nickname. Ji Xingtang's loud voice was abruptly cut off by Fu Shilv. Shut up. Sheng Youxia sneered. He wasn't trying to protect her. If he was, he would stopped it earlier. The nickname must been too ugly and unpleasant. Now that she thought about it, it made sense. Every month, there were a few days when Fu Shilv wanted her desperately, demanding it every other day without fail. So that was why. What did he take her for? Shilv, do you never touch her the other half of the month? Isn't he that unrealistic? Can you really endure it? Sheng Youxia stood next to the stark white wall, her face blending in with it, pale as a ghost. Ji Xingtang's voice returned, still full of questions. I'm curious, what do you feel about her? Is it just like a task to complete? Can you even get hard? The accompanying waitress standing nearby looked at Sheng Youxia with a mixture of sympathy in her eyes. Fu Shilv exhaled smoke, casually replying, women, it's the same with or without the lights. Sheng Youxia's face turned cold. Idiot. The waitress blinked, her eyes widening in surprise. With that look, that attitude, she cursed better than even the waitress. Sheng Youxia returned the phone to the woman. Thanks. She stood outside for a while, still within her ovulation period, which meant she would have to cooperate. Her chest felt tight, and no matter what, she didn't want to sleep with Fu Shilv tonight. She dialed Tang Hui's number directly and got to the point. Do you still have that medicine you mentioned last time? Tang Hui, being the best of friends, immediately understood. Yes, I carry it with me every day. Do you want it? Yes. I'm at Royal Hongju, could you bring me a pack? Tang Hui, although she had the medicine, had never used it herself. The thought of using it on Fu Shilv made her excited. I'm coming right now. But I can't guarantee there won't be side effects. Sheng Youxia reassured her. It's fine, I'm not taking it. When she returned to the private room, everyone was looking at her with amused smiles. Sheng Youxia pretended not to notice and calmly sat back next to Fu Shilv. Ji Xingtang was holding a cigarette, propping his chin up, grinning smugly. Is there something on my face? Sheng Youxia feigned ignorance. Ji Xingtang's chest rose and fell with laughter. He watched her take out her lipstick and makeup mirror from her bag. Sheng Youxia began touching up her makeup, deliberately choosing a bold, fiery red lipstick. After applying it, she pressed her lips together. Pop. Ji Xingtang gulped. Their essay saying, "Is tea there?" A flirt is hard to hide. Fu Shilv lowered his eyes and saw her actions, his expression tightening. Sheng Youxia traced her lips with her fingers, then leaned closer to him. My lipstick hasn't tea smeared, right? Her face, illuminated by the dim lighting, looked like a blooming rose, beautiful and sharp. Fu Shilv's brows furrowed so tightly that they could squash a fly. Cough, cough, Ji Xingtang coughed after inhaling smoke, nearly choking. Fu Shilv looked like he wanted to throw Sheng Youxia out, and a subtle discomfort began to stir in his chest. Go settle the bill. Sheng Youxia said, okay, and stood up. Ji Xingtang hurried to stop her. It's my birthday today, I'm treating. Let her go. Hearing that, Ji Xingtang reluctantly sat back down. Sheng Youxia didn't mind at all. She preferred not to make any excuses to meet with Tang Hui. She paid the bill at the front desk, and not long after, Tang Hui arrived, handing her a small package of powder. I'll be waiting for you to announce the results tomorrow. Sheng Youxia sat in Tang Hui's car, lowering the window and letting her hand hang outside. The cool night breeze flowed through her fingers as she clenched her fist, but caught nothing. Just like her feelings for Fu Shilv, she chased after him, but could never grasp him. If she insisted on holding onto him, she would only end up hurting herself. You should head back now, don't let him see you. Tang Hui nodded. Got it. When the group came out of the private room, Sheng Youxia was waiting by the door, and no one seemed surprised anymore. The two of them returned to Shizi Bay. Sheng Youxia made a cup of warm milk for Fu Shilv, with the special added ingredient. Fu Shilv had this habit, so when he took the glass, he didn't suspect anything. Sheng Youxia swallowed nervously. I wonder if this medicine will work. Fu Shilv pressed the glass to his lips, then looked at her with a slight frown. What's wrong? Sheng Youxia's gaze lingered on his lips thin, which meant he was a scumbag. Nothing, just tired. I'm going to take a shower and sleep. Fu Shilv drank the milk in one go, his voice firm. No, we're doing it tonight. Her face almost crumbled. Okay, you go shower first. Tonight was destined to be different. As Fu Shilv prepared to turn off the lights, Sheng Youxia stopped him. He raised his brow. Didn't you say, turning off the lights makes it feel better? I want to see you. That one sentence was enough to fuel the foreplay. Plus, tonight, Sheng Youxia was unusually active. Fu Shilv, feeling his resolve weaken, thought his bones were going soft. Sheng Youxia kissed his Adam's apple, trailing down his chest. She looked up at him, her eyes full of seduction, her head continuing downward. Fu Shilv's breathing grew shallow and rapid. But then, something was wrong. He couldn't get it up. Sheng Youxia's shoulders trembled as she buried her head in his chest. She couldn't hold it back anymore and almost laughed out loud. But she forced herself to stop, her face filled with disbelief. How did you suddenly? Like a balloon that was already inflated, only to deflate. Chapter 5. The body collapsed. The two stared at each other. It was no exaggeration. If a needle fell to the ground at this time, Sheng Youxia could hear it clearly. Fu Shilv stretched his arms and stared at the ground. He certainly didn't want to believe it. He had never been so speechless in his life. He got off the bed with a stinky face. His back looked thin and strong. Fu Shilv walked into the bathroom quickly. Sheng Youxia put her arms behind her head and really had to thank Tang Hui. The medicine was really effective. She didn't know what the man was doing in there, but Sheng Youxia guessed that he must be proving that he was still able to do it. She got up on tiptoe and pushed the door open without knocking when she got to the door. Sheng Youxia's face was full of worry and concern. Are you okay? Do you want to go to the hospital? The scene she saw more or less damaged Director Fu's image. He was doing a certain part of the examination. Who asked you to come in? Fu Shilv's voice rose. Men are very concerned about face in such matters. What hospital? Sheng Youxia pointed at him, showing her concern for him. You are definitely not doing this right. Is your body broken? He saw Fu Shilv's face, which was really broken. Sheng Youxia continued to provoke. Didn't the results from the hospital come out? I have no problem at all. Think about it again. Is the reason for not having children because of you? She wanted to stick the word "no" on his forehead. Fu Shilu was like a tiger with its whiskers plucked out. His eyes were fixed on Sheng Youxia, and his words were full of warnings. If you dare to go out and talk nonsense, you won't even know how you died. Sheng Youxia hurriedly agreed. Why would I talk nonsense about such a thing? If I tell others, others will laugh at me. Fu Shilu heard her tone. Why did it seem that he had already made the final judgment on him? Get out. Okay. Sheng Youxia walked over and patted Fu Shilu's shoulder. Take your time, don't rush, the more you rush, the worse it will be. The man grabbed Sheng Youxia's wrist angrily and waved her hand away. I've had several major operations these 2 days, and I'm a little tired. But he also felt that this reason was a bit far-fetched. No matter how tired he was, he wouldn't be impotent. The moment Sheng Youxia lay back on the bed, she almost rolled over happily. When she was about to fall asleep, she heard Fu Shilu's footsteps approaching. He lifted the quilt and turned off the light. The outside world had a high opinion of Fu Shilu. He was the flower of Galing in the hearts of countless women, a noble and unattainable figure. He encountered such a thing. I wonder how he felt at this time. Sheng Youxia turned around and moved to Fu Shilu's side. Her palm touched his abdominal muscles and wanted to probe down. Why don't you try again? He knew best what state he was in at this moment. Fu Shilu mercilessly pushed her hand away. Get lost. Oh. Sheng Youxia rolled back to where she was lying. She was sure that she could have a good sleep tonight. The phone rang unexpectedly. The man looked at the caller ID and answered the phone much faster. Hello. Mr. Fu, the person who donated the cornea may not be able to hold on, but the family is not willing to give up the rescue. Sheng Youxia's breath tightened. The tendons on the back of Fu Shilu's hand extended all their way to his wrist. When can the operation be performed? We have to wait, it should be soon. Sheng Youxia heard it clearly from the side. Fu Shilu ordered, no mistakes. Yes, I will keep an eye on it. Fu Shilu hung up the call. Sheng Youxia clenched her hands tightly in the quilt. It would be very difficult to do it under Fu Shilu's nose. Fortunately, Fu Shilu was completely defenseless against her. Sheng Youxia tried her best, but only found a little information about the donor, but she couldn't see where the person was. She pretended to be nonchalant and asked, how old is the person who donated the cornea? Why are you asking this? Sheng Youxia pulled the quilt higher, not revealing any trace. Doesn't that mean that someone is going to die? If it's very young, what a pity. Fu Shilu is a doctor, and he is used to seeing life and death. The so-called doctor is to spare no effort when he can save the patient, but as a doctor, he can accept death calmly more than anyone else. It's a college student who had a serious car accident. Sheng Youxia paused for several seconds before speaking again. Is he staying in your hospital? Fu Shilu didn't doubt her, but he didn't say it clearly. It's none of your business. But Sheng Youxia knew from his expression that she guessed right. This is her advantage in the dark. Sleep. Her shoulders slid into the quilt, and Fu Shilu didn't hear any fluctuations in her words. He didn't care about so much, his eyes fell on his lower body, and he didn't know if he would feel better tomorrow. The next day, Fu Shilu and Sheng Youxia went out almost at the same time. The hospital is so big, it's not easy to find someone. Sheng Youxia searched in the inpatient department for a long time, but didn't get any useful clues. She went downstairs and planned to try her luck in Area B. Sheng Youxia. She stopped suddenly, and when she turned around, she saw Fu Shilu had come to her. There was a young female doctor with him. He raised his hand and took off Sheng Youxia's hat. She was wearing a pair of sunglasses on her face, like a thief. Why are you here? She had a small face, and her sunglasses were about to fall down, so Sheng Youxia simply took them off. Her mind was very fast, and she almost never stopped. She reached out and took Fu Shilu's arm. I came to see you, I want to have dinner with you. I'm busy. This bastard used all his warmth on others, and even pulled his arm away. The female doctor put her hands in her pockets, with an expression of watching a good show. The breeze blew, and the sun shone into the layers of leaves, leaking a few rays, forming a gently swaying light circle. Fu Shilu's half-face was immersed in a glimmer of light, with a beautiful jawline, and the white coat was loosely piled on him. The breath of abstinence was soaring. Why is she so shy? Sheng Youxia stepped forward, lifted his white coat, and put her arm around his waist, hugging his strong waist tightly. There were people coming and going here, and Fu Shilu's face was almost green. What are you doing? Have you eaten? Fu Shilu's eyes were still cold under his glasses. Let's go to the cafeteria now. Then I'll go with you. If he didn't agree, she might not let go. Fu Shilu lowered his eyes to look at her. Are you used to it? I'm used to it. The female doctor next to him looked a little unnatural, and she didn't know whether to leave or stay. Fu Shilu took Sheng Youxia to the cafeteria of the hospital. He ordered the dishes and she watched from the side. What are you eating? The man asked her after he finished ordering. Sheng Youxia felt very sad. She could remember his taste clearly, but he probably couldn't even name a dish she liked, right? Sheng Youxia picked up 2 dishes at random, and then sat down at the table with Fu Shilu. As soon as she sat down, she threw a sentence in front of her. Tell me, what is your real purpose for coming to the hospital? Chapter 6. Didn't I sleep in the same bed with you last night? She knew that this man was not so easy to fool. Sheng Youxia clenched her chopsticks. Can't I just miss you? Didn't I sleep in the same bed with you last night? Sheng Youxia hissed, her pupils shocked. This is a hospital. Is Director Fu so fierce? Fu Shilu seemed to be mocking her, his lips curled up slightly. No one heard. Let's get back to the point, tell me the real purpose. Sheng Youxia glanced at the female doctor just now. She was sensible and didn't sit over. She poked the rice on the plate with chopsticks, raised her head to meet the man. Facing Fu Shilu's scrutiny, she didn't panic. If it weren't for my identity as Mrs. Fu, I would have slapped her in the face just now. What? Fu Shilu frowned. Sheng Youxia lied without thinking. I can see that she is interested in you. She flirted with you in front of me just now. Fu Shilu was obviously unhappy. There were many women who wanted to get close to him, but Sheng Youxia dealt with them openly or secretly. Fu Shilu didn't want to bother her before. If you dare to come to the hospital to make trouble, just try it. Sheng Youxia was relieved when she heard it, at least it meant that he believed this reason. She buried her head in eating and ignored him. She didn't care what Fu Shilu would think of her anymore. She had dreamed of making him fall in love with her for several years, and it was time to wake up. After lunch, Sheng Youxia played the game to the end and followed Fu Shilu to the office. She was talking to the nurses at the medical information desk outside. As usual, I've ordered Starbucks and fruits, they'll be here soon. Oh my god, Mrs. Fu is really an angel on earth. You always order delicious food for us every time you come back. I love you so much. Fu Shilu's door was not closed. When he looked up, he could still see Sheng Youxia. This woman is very good at winning people's hearts. He put his hand on the other side and took a medical record. Fu Shilu opened the cover. There was a photo of a woman printed on the medical insurance card. She was plain-faced and had delicate features. Her eyes were clean and there was no trace of scheming. With such beautiful eyes, she should look at everything in the world more. Sheng Youxia looked over and happened to see this scene. It was break time and the afternoon consultation had not started yet. The medical record in his hand was probably Liang Nianwei's. Sheng Youxia felt sad, but he had to keep a smile on his face. Xiao Song, who is the best male specialist in your hospital? R. Nurse Xiao Song had a gossip circle on her head. You want to see the male specialist? Who wants to see him? Sheng Youxia waved her hand. I'm just asking casually, can you help me find out? No problem. Nurse Xiao Song took out her mobile phone, asked in the nurse group, and soon got the answer. You can see Dr. Huang Yuquan, but you have to make an appointment in advance. Sheng Youxia nodded. Okay, thank you. She left without staying any longer. After a while, the things Sheng Youxia ordered were delivered. Today's fruit was very simple, all bananas. Big bananas, small bananas, several bunches. Oh, she understands. Nurse Xiao Song was surprised and shocked, then she broke 2 bananas and walked into Fu Shilu's office. Director Fu. Fu Shilu was resting with his eyes closed, and he didn't even open his eyelids, but he responded softly, yeah. Nurse Xiao Song tiptoed closer and looked at the light of Huaxing Hospital, who was so bright and beautiful. She put the banana on his desk. It was not easy to comfort him. They all talked about it behind his back. Being Mrs. Fu must be the happiest thing. After all, they all agreed that Director Fu's waist was very strong. It seems that every family has its own problems. You should take care of it. Nurse Xiao Song swallowed the 4 words, like cures like, and ran away. Fu Shilu's brows were slightly confused, and he opened his eyes to see what was on the table. The bananas were still short and small. Chapter 7 Lonely Long Night, You Want to Solve It Yourself. Sheng Youxia returned to Zizuan. It was not a solution to continue looking like this. It would be better to hire a few people to pretend to be patients and screen them layer by layer. When Fu Shilu called, she was still in a daze, and it took several seconds before she answered. Hello. Sheng Youxia, are you looking for death? The man's voice was cold, and his nature of not being kind was exposed. Mr. Fu, I'm in good health. Even if you want me to move, don't curse me. Don't be pretentious with me. Did you register for Huang Youchuan's expert appointment? Are you going to let the whole hospital know? Sheng Youxia felt a slight itch in her neck, and she gently scratched the thin flesh with her fingers. Well, I'm really worried about you. Worried about the lonely nights, you want to solve it yourself. Sheng Youxia really admired him. He was the first person who could make her blush with just one sentence. Yes, Sheng Youxia continued, harmony in married life is very important. I'm still so young. Beep beep beep. He hung up. That night, Fu Shilu didn't go home, but Sheng Youxia was used to it. She couldn't resist Tang Hui's soft and hard persuasion, so she went out to have a drink with her. It actually works, har har har, then I have to prepare a few more packs. What if she needs it? Sheng Youxia just took a sip of sake, not more. You find a way to get me some more. Tang Hui couldn't believe it. You want more? Yeah. If I take too much, it will arouse his suspicion, right? Sheng Youxia pinched the wine glass with 2 fingers, and she swung her wrist, watching the wine splashing in the glass. I won't take too much. He won't touch me this month. Save this medicine for next month. Sheng Youxia told her what Ji Xingtang and the others said. Tang Hui was so angry that she trembled all over. Okay, I'll take care of the medicine. It's best if he can't lift it for the rest of his life. She wanted to comfort her dear friend. Tang Hui watched Sheng Youxia stumble along the way and felt it was really not worth it. Besides, Fu Shilu has a woman who is gradually becoming interested in him. There will be an event at Nanhu next week. Let's go and have some fun. Don't you like watching fireworks? I'll book a cruise. Sheng Youxia's eyes dimmed a little. She wanted Fu Shilu to accompany her last year, but he refused. Back home, the light in the master bedroom was on. Sheng Youxia walked in. Fu Shilu was sitting on the bed. He had taken a shower and looked refreshed. Where did you go? Sheng Youxia took off her coat. I had dinner with Tang Hui. The man's hair was half dry. He put his hand on the towel and wiped his head gently. Sheng Youxia saw several protruding tendons on the back of his hand. While she was lost in thought, Fu Shilu pulled the towel down and looked at her with his head raised. I'm fine now. What's fine? Fu Shilu was a little impatient. If it were normal times, he might not even bother to answer. But tonight, he showed rare patience to Sheng Youxia. I'm not sick, I was just tired the past 2 days. He emphasized some words. Sheng Youxia said, oh, it turns out, she can stand up straight again. Fu Shilu saw that she was perfunctory, and there was no joy on her face. Don't you want to say anything? Sheng Youxia smiled, and a bit of bitterness suddenly appeared between her eyebrows. Congratulations on your revival, then, do you want to do it tonight? As she said, she sat next to him, and just before she raised her hand to touch the man's face, he avoided her and got on the bed. Chapter 8 Being hugged by a strange man. Fu Shilu, this dog, really didn't bother to touch her after her ovulation period. Sheng Youxia, you smell of alcohol all over your body, can't you smell it yourself? Sheng Youxia put his arm in front of his nose and sniffed it. The woman he likes probably likes to drink strawberry milk, pure and sweet. She sat by the bed for a while. Although it was hard to ask, she still wanted to try. Are you free next Tuesday? What for? Sheng Youxia always wanted to go watch the fireworks with him. She had always wanted to do so before, and now she wanted to do so even more. She might go blind someday. Nanhu has a big event for 3 days every year. I want to join in the fun. Fu Shilu didn't like this. It was crowded and I couldn't even walk. What was there to do? I had a full schedule of surgeries during those days, and I had to work overtime at night. This answer was completely within Sheng Youxia's expectations, but what she wanted was also very simple. She just wanted to take a photo with him when the fireworks were in full bloom, even if he was perfunctory. She didn't want to wait until she couldn't see and had nothing left. Just take a moment, half an hour is fine. Fu Shilu saw that her expression was a little strange. Let's talk about it then. Sheng Youxia automatically understood this as willing, and her eyebrows gradually opened. Okay. On Tuesday, Sheng Youxia sent a message to Fu Shilu, asking him not to forget today's appointment. But until the evening, she didn't get a reply from Fu Shilu. Tang Hui drove over to pick her up, and before getting in the car, Sheng Youxia called him. But it wasn't him who answered the phone. Hello, Director Fu has a surgery that hasn't come out yet. If you have any urgent matters, I'll ask him to call you later. Sheng Youxia said no, just ask him to remember to check WeChat. Okay. She got into Tang Hui's car. Tang Hui had just dyed her hair pink. Sheng Youxia stared at it for a few seconds, and Tang Hui leaned in front of the rearview mirror, looking a little annoyed. Is it really not good looking? My mother almost broke my legs. No, it's very beautiful, and I want to dye it too. Tang Hui picked up a tuft of her hair. Really? Sheng Youxia leaned against the seat, with some envy in her eyes. Don't care what others think, I still want to dye it green. Tang Hui couldn't help but burst out laughing, but she saw the loneliness on Sheng Youxia's face. Where's Fu Shilu? Is he busy? I just called, he's still in surgery, but he promised me last week and should come over soon. Tang Hui started the car. Fu Go's words, just listen to it, it doesn't count. Both sides of Nanhu Lake were already full of people, mostly young couples. The night wind stirred the coolness of the lake, and it felt piercing on the face. Tang Hui dragged Sheng Youxia into the crowd. It's a pity that we didn't buy the cruise ticket, otherwise we could go to the Pearl Tower to watch the fireworks. Sheng Youxia was absent-minded and kept looking at her phone. It was past 9 o'clock in the evening, and the sky was getting colder and colder. Sheng Youxia stood by the river, her knees frozen. She couldn't hide the disappointment in her eyes. There was no message from him on her phone. Look, a cruise ship. Tang Hui arched her arm. Sheng Youxia raised her eyes slightly, and the South Lake suddenly became calm. A cruise ship broke through the lake and was coming. The distance was not far. When Sheng Youxia didn't have eye disease, her eyesight was amazing. At least she saw a familiar figure at a glance. The sightseeing cruise was moving very slowly. Sheng Youxia was standing at a scenic spot. She watched the cruise ship approach and stop. Tang Hui wanted to say that the fireworks were about to start, so she turned her head to look at her, but saw that her face was as pale as paper. Shia. Sheng Youxia's pupils reflected a tall and straight figure. She tried to blink her eyes. She was not mistaken. It was Fu Shilu who was supposed to work overtime in the hospital. Next to him was a petite figure, wearing a houndstooth scarf, revealing half of her face. At this moment, Sheng Youxia wished she was blind. She raised her eyes and saw Ji Xingtang and others. Each of them brought a female companion. It was so lively. So, Fu Shilu not only brought Liang Nianwei out, but also brought her to meet his friends. He completely forgot his agreement with Sheng Youxia. The cruise ship that she couldn't get a ticket for turned out to be booked by him. Tang Hui narrowed her eyes and said, fuck. She looked around and saw a bottle of water in the hand of a stranger next to her. She reached out and grabbed it and swung it towards the deck. Fu Shilu, fuck you. There were voices all around, and her greetings were drowned out. But the bottle of mineral water fell directly at Liang Nianwei's feet. She was blind, and the slightest sound made her like a frightened bird. She subconsciously dodged to the side and bumped into Fu Shilu. In Sheng Youxia's view, his action was like hugging Liang Nianwei in his arms. What's wrong? Liang Nianwei clenched her hands in a hurry, her face full of panic. Fu Shilu looked over and looked at Sheng Youxia from a distance of several meters. He squinted slightly and spoke in a very light tone. It's okay, something accidentally fell on it. Liang Nianwei stood beside Fu Shilu, dressed so simply and plainly, and the edges of the pair of white shoes on her feet were yellowed. She stood up straight, just in front of Fu Shilu's chest, her eyes were looking around helplessly. She even let go of Fu Shilu's hand and stood aside. Are she? Tang Hui stepped over the railing, wanting to jump into the river to climb the cruise ship. Sheng Youxia came to her senses and held her back. You can't swim. She was really anxious and confused. Tang Hui kept pointing at the cruise ship and cursing, but the people on it couldn't hear a word. Sheng Youxia looked at Fu Shilu's dull appearance. Did he not remember the agreement with her, or did he not care at all, and was she still waiting for him? Sheng Youxia stood there, her heart was crushed and torn, she was not mentally prepared at all. Tang Hui's lips trembled with anger, she looked to the side, the man whose water she had robbed before was staring at them. Tang Hui forced herself to calm down, and said with a fake smile, "Handsome guy, can you help me?" "How to help?" Tang Hui approached him and said a few words. On the cruise ship, Liang Nianwei turned her head and asked Fu Shilu, "Dr. Fu, is someone scolding us?" "No," Fu Shilu answered simply, "you heard it wrong." He was about to look away from Sheng Youxia, but saw a man's arm raised and hugged her shoulders. He even pulled her into his arms. And Sheng Youxia didn't refuse. Chapter 9. He told other women not to be afraid. Fu Shilu's face became more serious. Sheng Youxia thought that it was Tang Hui who was hugging her, so she did not move. He walked to the side, looking like he was going to get off the cruise ship. Bang! On the opposite river, the first firework exploded, making a huge noise. For Liang Nianwei, who could not see the light, the huge fear was like a river water sweeping over her head. She covered her ears with both hands and squatted down. "Dr. Fu." Fu Shilu stopped and turned back to her, "Don't be afraid, it's just the fireworks that have started." He squatted down, pulled Liang Nianwei up, and took her to the railing. "You stand here, you are very close to those fireworks." Sheng Youxia saw the colorful lights breaking through the night sky, and saw the angular Fu Shilu illuminated when the fireworks fell, and Liang Nianwei with her hands clasped together making a wish. "Dr. Fu, thank you for fulfilling my wish. When my eyes are healed, I will definitely repay you." The sparks swayed at the bottom of Sheng Youxia's pool, flickering between light and dark, like a ghost fire. All the figures in front of her were blurred. She stretched out her hand, but could not touch Fu Shilu, nor could she touch the tiny light. "Tang Hui." Her voice became tense, "Let's go home, don't stay here." Sheng Youxia turned around and couldn't even see who was next to her. The only person she could rely on now was Tang Hui. She hugged the waist of the person next to her tightly, "My eyes are uncomfortable." Tang Hui stood on the other side and was about to say that she hugged the wrong person. "Is her waist that thick?" But when she turned her head to look at the cruise ship, she saw Fu Shilu's gaze, like a knife. Ji Xingtang waved his hands on the deck, watching the fun without thinking about the big deal. "Sister-in-law, come up and play." Tang Hui gave him a middle finger, and she smiled at Fu Shilu provocatively. Did he think that no one wanted his wife? What a joke! Back then, the people who pursued Sheng Youxia lined up from Jiangdong to Jiangxi, right? When Ji Xingtang saw Sheng Youxia hugging a man, his face changed instantly, thinking that his buddy was wearing a shiny green hat on his head. "Sheng Youxia, what are you doing? You are not a good wife." Liang Nianwei turned her focused little face to the side, with a trace of cautious doubt. "Who is Sheng Youxia?" Fu Shilu's face was gloomy, and his mind was full of Sheng Youxia hugging others. She walked very quickly, but unexpectedly her knee hit the trash can. Sheng Youxia stopped in pain. Tang Hui chased after her, and yelled at the man next to her, "Why are you standing there? Carry her away." Sheng Youxia was picked up by a pair of strong arms. It was not until then that she realized that the person she was hugging was not Tang Hui. "Who are you?" The man's voice fell on her head. "Is it too late for you to ask now? Put me down first." He tightened his arms. "Is the one on the cruise ship your boyfriend? Don't move, he's looking this way." Tang Hui chased after the two people, and it was very difficult to squeeze out, so she simply ran to the front to clear their way. Ji Xingtang was given the middle finger, and he was vomiting to death, and he was ready to find Fu Shilu. The brother beside him grabbed him and asked, "Where are you going?" "Let Fu Shilu rest, Sheng Youxia." The man clicked his tongue twice. "Is it necessary? Do you think Fu Shilu cares about her? Besides, Liang Nianwei probably doesn't know these things. She is so innocent and will have psychological burdens." "That's right. Don't scare the little white rabbit." The man carried Sheng Youxia all the way to the park outside. She struggled to get down. "Just put it here." Tang Hui pointed to a bench next to her. He carried her all the way without panting. His physical strength is really good. Tang Hui took out her wallet while looking at her, took out a handful of money from it, and handed it over. "Thank you." The man was slightly stunned. He probably didn't expect such a straightforward way to thank her. He reached out to take the money. Tang Hui noticed the watch on his hand. If it was real, the watch would be worth 7 figures. "My name is Wen Ziyi." You can call me if you have such a good thing next time. Okay. Tang Hui said, took out her mobile phone and handed over the WeChat friend code. She thought that men paid more attention to appearance. For example, the man in front of her, although she just met him, she had already thought about what posture to take when going to bed. After when Zai added him as a friend, he looked at Sheng Youxia. She sat there motionless with empty eyes. Tang Hui was afraid that others would see it, so she quickly sent him away. Meeting is fate. I will treat you to dinner another day. Okay. The man's eyes were still fixed on Sheng Youxia's face, but her eyes seemed to be unable to accommodate anyone. After he walked away, Tang Hui sat next to Sheng Youxia. Xia, how are your eyes? Are you blind again? Sheng Youxia listened to their voice in the distance and closed her eyes lightly. It will be fine in a while. Don't be too sad, there are two-legged men everywhere. Sheng Youxia didn't respond. Being blind, her heart was clearer. Tang Hui sat beside her. The chair was cold. She held Sheng Youxia's hand. After a long time, Tang Hui heard her speak. Tang Hui, do you think Liang Nianwei knows that Fu Shilu is married? 80% of them don't know. Fu Shilu will definitely not tell her, and his group of friends will not tell them either. Sheng Youxia looked at the night scene that was gradually becoming clear in her eyes, and her lips were drawn without a trace. She lives in Fu Shilu's hospital. I have seen the gossiping ability of those nurses. They are not the ones who don't know anything. Tang Hui was terrified when she heard it. She didn't do it on purpose tonight. Sheng Youxia shook her head, I don't know. She took out her phone and stood up. The fireworks were still blooming in the distance. Sheng Youxia took a selfie. Xia, you are not overstimulated, are you? Sheng Youxia looked expressionless and returned to Tang Hui's side. Show me your circle of friends. Although Tang Hui didn't know what she was going to do, she still clicked it obediently. She kept scrolling down and soon saw a dynamic. The person who posted the circle was Fu Shilu's friend, who was also on the cruise ship just now. He posted a photo of himself, but Fu Shilu and Liang Nianwei were photographed later. Liang Nianwei didn't show her face, but only half of her body was photographed. But her scarf and her clothes were all in the photo. The man also added a sentence, lovers will eventually get married, right? Damn, you still have the nerve to post on WeChat moments. Tang Hui wanted to reply, do you want to give you a coffin? Sheng Youxia stopped her, my mother-in-law has their WeChat, she should be able to see it too. Tang Hui suddenly realized that Fu Shilu's mother was also in her communication. Xia, send me the selfie you just took, and I will send it too. She had a bit of obsessive-compulsive disorder, and she felt uncomfortable if she didn't fill the 9-square grid. Tang Hui added some riverside scenery photos, but it was still not enough, so she randomly stuffed a picture from the album in. She laughed and wrote, wild mandarin ducks will never have spring, and they will be beaten sooner or later, right? Chapter 10 Who is the man hugging you? If Mrs. Fu had been interested, she would have seen at a glance that the person next to Fu Shilu was not Sheng Youxia. Since Liang Nianwei wanted to be a mistress, she shouldn't hide behind and keep silent, but stand up and let everyone see her. On the cruise ship, Xia Rui was browsing his phone and suddenly saw Tang Hui's circle of friends. Ji Xingtang came over, his eyes wide open, it's rare, why do you have that red-haired WeChat? It's hard to explain, I had a blind date with her. Xia Rui clicked on the photos, scrolling through them one by one, and when the last one popped up, his eyes widened. Ji Xingtang was so excited, men are visual animals, who can stand this scene? Is this Tang Hui? Bullshit, Xia Rui said bluntly, she's a runway, how can she be so turbulent? That's. Ji Xingtang immediately thought of Sheng Youxia, the two of them were together tonight. What are you looking at? Fu Shilu's voice came with a cold wind, which made the two people's faces tighten. Ji Xingtang felt guilty for no reason, nothing. Fu Shilu had already come to the two of them, and Xia Rui hurriedly wanted to leave, but was still seen by the man. He grabbed the phone, and what he saw was a picture of a breast being squeezed by both hands. A pair of hands pinched her round breasts, revealing her seductive whiteness and a deep groove between her fingers. The jade peak stood tall, with clear grooves. Fu Shilu took a look and saw that it was sent by Tang Hui. He had a kind of silent anger, and his jawline was tense for a while. Delete it. Xia Rui coughed lightly, I didn't send it. Fu Shilu took a closer look at the hands pinching her breasts, and judging from the finger bones, they were women's. That means Tang Hui pinched Sheng Youxia. Ji Xingtang and Xiao Rui had already turned their eyes away, as if they hadn't seen anything. Fu Shilu sent Liang Nianwei back to their hospital. She couldn't see, and she walked very slowly, holding the corner of the man's clothes. Dr. Fu, are the fireworks beautiful tonight? Fu Shilu seemed absent-minded. Yeah. What do they look like? Soon, you'll be able to see it with your own eyes. Liang Nianwei had always been depressed, but after this trip, she was in a completely different spirit. Dr. Fu, how much does the surgery cost? Fu Shilu's eyes fell on her face. She didn't have any valuable clothes on her body. If you look closely, the scarf around her neck was snagged. This is not something you need to consider. Liang Nianwei reached into her pocket, took out a piece of paper, and handed it to Fu Shilu. What is this? She saw that Fu Shilu didn't reach out to take it, so she hurriedly pulled him. She held his fingers. The man's fingertips were slightly cold, and his palms were dry. Liang Nianwei's face flushed, and she quickly stuffed the paper to him. Fu Shilu opened it and saw that it was an IOU. The handwriting on it was crooked, and she wrote it stroke by stroke. If you don't take it, I won't do this operation. Fu Shilu stared at her for a while. He knew her family situation. Dr. Fu, I will be able to see again soon. Then I can go out to make money. I will pay you back by myself. She said it so seriously, every word was clear, and there was light in her eyes. Fu Shilu folded the IOU and put it in his pocket. Okay. Sheng Youxia sat in front of the dressing mirror. She had just taken a shower and applied neck cream on one hand when her mother-in-law called. She tapped her finger on the screen. Mom, it's so late, why haven't you slept yet? Xia, the weather is nice today, did you go out to play? Sheng Youxia put her palm on her neck. Yeah, I went to Nanhu to watch the fireworks. Did Shilu go? Sheng Youxia paused for 2 or 3 seconds before her voice rose, her tone deliberately pretending to be relaxed. We went together, he accompanied me to watch the fireworks show. Mother-in-law seemed to be trying her best to hold back something. Did you watch it on the cruise ship? No, I didn't get the cruise ship ticket. Mother-in-law didn't know what to say. Even in this situation, the daughter-in-law was still covering up for her disappointing son. He actually left his wife alone and used the big cruise ship to pick up a vixen. Xia, go to bed quickly. Come back for dinner on the weekend. Mom has prepared a lot of delicious food for you. Sheng Youxia promised. Okay, thank you, Mom. After hanging up the phone, the room returned to silence. Sheng Youxia finished her skin care and went to bed, turned off the lights and went to sleep. When Fu Shilu came back, she heard it clearly. The footsteps came from the door, and the light from the balcony fell on the bed through the glass. Soon, the man's figure came to the bed, and the shadow covered half of Sheng Youxia's face. Fu Shilu took off his coat and sweater. The shirt was thrown to the ground, and he bent down and pulled off the thin blanket covering Sheng Youxia. She was turned over by Fu Shilu, and he pressed against her back, and his palms slid up from her waist. His hands rubbed in front of her, very hard, their bodies were entangled, and he still refused to let go. Sheng Youxia was immersed in the trap of pain and tingling. Fu Shilu, what are you doing? He pressed his face against her neck, her skin was cold. Fu Shilu rubbed it twice with more force, and then he freed one hand to push away her long hair scattered behind her back. He pressed his hand against her earlobe and sucked the thin flesh behind her ear. Sheng Youxia was sensitive, and her body was as tense as a taut string. Is there person with you tonight, Liang Nianwei? What about you? Fu Shilu's heavy desire could not hide the turbulent waves. Who is the man hugging you? The tiny and burning breath blended, and Fu Shilu's waist and abdomen pressed tightly against her. The beast hidden in the body was ready to explode. Sheng Youxia didn't want to entangle with him in bed. I had hypoglycemia at the time, I didn't know that person, he saved me. Fu Shilu's hand fell back in front of Sheng Youxia. He was particularly obsessed with this part of her, which could not be contained in one palm and could be pinched into a soft semicircle. Sheng Youxia didn't want to go to bed with him, but the more she struggled, the more the man's wild desire could not be suppressed. Sheng Youxia cooperated with his hands, and her tiny moans flowed out. Don't you want to try something different? Fu Shilu felt as if someone had poked him in the heart, and it was itchy. How do we play? Sheng Youxia turned her head and stared at him. You let go first, I'll take the initiative. Even in the dark, Sheng Youxia could still see the strong desire in the man's eyes. Fu Shilu got up from her, Sheng Youxia got off the bed, and took off her nightgown and underwear. She cleared her throat. I'm so thirsty. She walked not far away, took a bottle of milk, and unscrewed the lid. Sheng Youxia drank half a bottle, gently opened the drawer with one hand, and took out the medicine Tang Hui gave her from it. She mixed the powder into the milk and returned to the bed while shaking it. Chapter 11. I don't want to touch you. Sheng Youxia turned on the light and handed the milk to Fu Shilu. He sat on the bedside, raised his eyelids slightly. I only drink fresh milk. So picky. Sheng Youxia raised her legs and sat on Fu Shilu, her arms wrapped around his neck, and she put the milk carton to her chest. The milky white liquid, as smooth as silk, flowed from her chest to her slender waist. Does this count? Fu Shilu's eyes darkened, as if dyed with peach color. The impact of Tang Hui's photo on him was too great, and he couldn't calm down until now. The hot breath flowed between his nostrils, fainting at the tip of Sheng Youxia. Fu Shilu leaned over and grabbed it. Her fingers that climbed his shoulders were deeply embedded in his flesh. When he looked up, Sheng Youxia took a mouthful of milk and passed it to his mouth. She fed him mouthful by mouthful, letting him drink the rest of the milk and medicine. Sheng Youxia's lips were rosy, as if coated with honey, and the tip of her tongue was pink. In bed, Fu Shilu always took the lead. This was her first time taking the initiative. If she wanted to wait for the effect of his medicine to take effect, she had to prolong the foreplay. Fu Shilu pinched her delicate waist, trying to break through in one fell swoop. Sheng Youxia had no choice but to wrap her legs around his waist. You can't eat hot tofu in a hurry. He rubbed her crotch hard. Sheng Youxia didn't have much experience, so she used her hands, feet, and mouth together. The dim light and the hot body reflected a vivid picture in each other's eyes. She felt the changes in his body. Sheng Youxia saw his face froze, and she asked knowingly, "What's wrong?" He lifted her waist with his arms and threw her on the bed. She saw Fu Shilu get up and hurried to the bathroom. The man tossed around inside, and when he came out, his hair was wet and his bathrobe was loose on his body. Sheng Youxia lay on the bed, knowing that he was exhausted. She asked, "Don't you want to continue?" Fu Shilu bent down, picked up the quilt, and threw it on her. "I don't want to touch you." You can imagine how angry he felt when his anger was forcibly extinguished. Sheng Youxia glanced under him, and her eyes seemed to contain other meanings. Fu Shilu couldn't let her think about it, so he changed the subject. "Don't you know the man who hugged you?" "Yeah." "Before he hugged you, he hugged you." Sheng Youxia didn't understand. How could he have the face to ask here? "If I remember correctly, you should have come to my appointment tonight, but you didn't answer my call and didn't reply to my message." Sheng Youxia saw it clearly today. Liang Nianwei was at most a beautiful girl from a small family. When she stood next to Fu Shilu, she looked even more ordinary. But all these couldn't stop Fu Shilu from liking her. She has been in a bad mental state recently and is passive in treatment. Sheng Youxia turned around. She was not a masochist who liked to hear how her husband tried to please another woman. Fu Shilu lay on the bed, still brooding over the photo. "Next time, don't let your friends touch you randomly. Also, everyone can see this photo. Aren't you afraid that others will recognize you?" Sheng Youxia was in a terrible mood, as if she had just capsized in a gutter. "What photo?" Fu Shilu seemed to have suddenly thought of something, and his tone sank a lot. "Does Tang Hui like women? Otherwise, how could he pinch her so pervertedly?" Sheng Youxia immediately thought of the picture in Tang Hui's circle of friends. "That's a picture she found online, it has nothing to do with me. If Director Fu is so free, go see a doctor." The first time, he could explain that he was tired, but this time, he was sick. Fu Shilu didn't expect that it was a picture from the internet. The next day, in the evening, the men's department welcomed the last customer. The computer had finished calling numbers, and it was supposed to be time to get off work. Dr. Huang lifted his glasses on the bridge of his nose and looked at the man who came in with a puzzled look on his face. The black shoulder coat made him look straight, and the black mask almost covered his face, revealing his eyes and forehead. Dr. Huang was puzzled. "Are you here to see a doctor?" The man didn't have a medical record card in his hand. He sat on the chair next to him. "I came to see you in the afternoon, but the examination list hasn't come out yet." He expected that the doctor would not remember every patient. As expected, Dr. Huang looked suspicious. "Why don't you describe your problem again?" The man considered how to start. "I have a friend who has always been healthy, but during the last 2 times of sex." Dr. Huang saw that he was halfway through his words and knew that he had something to hide. Did you not lift it up during the process, or did it suddenly become soft? The man crossed his hands and held them together, and the veins at his temples seemed to tighten. Dr. Huang stood up and walked to the side, took a bottle of mineral water and put it next to him. The man raised his face to look at him, and although he felt that the atmosphere was a bit weird, he still said, "It belongs to the second type." Dr. Huang supported his hands on the desk, his body slightly bent. "Director Fu, why don't you take off your mask, isn't it stuffy?" Fu Shilu's eyes were surprised. How could he be recognized like this? Dr. Huang had an expression of, "I understand you, has this happened before, or just these 2 times?" If Fu Shilu knew that he would be recognized, he would never step into this door. He lowered his eyelids. "Just these 2 times. Have you been out recently? Or let's put it this way, have you ever drunk wine handed to you by a stranger?" Fu Shilu's circle is quite fixed. Apart from Ji Xingtang and the others, he will not attend any messy social events. "Dr. Huang, I'm asking for my friend." "Oh. Dr. Huang knows it well. Who doesn't have a friend who takes the blame? In the past 2 weeks, I have really received a lot of patients with the same situation as you. There is no big problem. They were just drugged." Fu Shilu still did not take off his mask. As he breathed, his face was covered by a layer of scorching heat. He stretched out his hand and pulled it, feeling irritable. "What kind of medicine is that? It's completely opposite to aphrodisiacs, and the drug works very quickly. Generally, it can make an adult man erectile dysfunction in about 20 minutes. You know, some people just want to make some money by playing around, but they don't dare to offend people openly, so they just drug them." On both occasions, Fu Shilu was only accompanied by Sheng Youxia. Thinking of the 2 glasses of milk, Fu Shilu stood up from the chair. "Director Fu, this is just a possibility. We need to do a detailed examination. Otherwise, take off your pants." "No need." Fu Shilu firmly believed that he was fine, but was tricked. He walked quickly to the door and stretched out his hand to open it. "Dr. Huang, I hope you can keep today's matter confidential. Of course, the principle of our men's clinic is to protect the privacy of every patient, don't worry." On their way back, Fu Shilu called Sheng Youxia. "I've seen the doctor." Sheng Youxia's tone was slightly tense. "What did you say?" Chapter 12. The smell of another woman's perfume on her body. He was driving, and Sheng Youxia heard the sound of a car horn coming from the phone. Although Tang Hui said that the drug could not find anything in the body and asked her to put her mind at ease, she was still guilty. Fu Shilu seemed to be teasing her appetite, tapping his fingers on the steering wheel. "If there is really a problem, I will accompany you to treat it, and I will not abandon you." Fu Shilu was not moved by this. "The doctor said I am fine, very normal." Sheng Youxia breathed a sigh of relief. "Good, I can use the medicine boldly in the future. Then it should be too tired, I will buy some supplements to stew for you." "No, I won't be back these days." Their voice on the other end was like a tape that suddenly stuck. Sheng Youxia didn't ask him if he wanted to accompany Liang Nianwei. In short, Fu Shilu's heart was not on her. "Okay, but Sunday is Cece's birthday, don't forget." Sheng Youxia promised Fu Sai to help her arrange the birthday party. Fu Shilu responded indifferently, "I'll pick you up when the time comes. There is a residence near the hospital, and he usually lives there half of the time." After parking the car in the basement, Fu Shilu went upstairs. Dinner alone can be dealt with casually. He ordered a meal and went to bed early after eating. After turning off the lights, the room fell into darkness. Fu Shilu turned around and reached out to the side, but hugged nothing. When he slept with Sheng Youxia, he liked to hug her breasts to sleep. She didn't contact him again tonight. Sheng Youxia was not like this before. If he didn't come home at night, she would want to call him up. Now that this annoying energy is gone, he doesn't feel much relieved. On Sunday, Fu Shilu went to Zizuan to pick her up, and Sheng Youxia put the big and small bags of things in his trunk. When he rested, he automatically switched back to the identity of the young master of the Fu family and drove an 8-digit Bentley. Sheng Youxia opened the car door and sat in the passenger seat. The pungent smell of perfume rushed into her nostrils. She wrinkled her nose subconsciously. As soon as Fu Shilu's car drove out, she rolled down the window. "What's wrong?" the man asked knowingly. Sheng Youxia waved her hand in front of her. "It smells a bit strong." This smell is a woman's fragrance, and it is a particularly vulgar and cheap smell. She doesn't believe that Fu Shilu can't smell it. Is it so bad? The fresh air outside blew in, and the car was also purified a lot. Director Fu, I advise you not to use this car to pick up Liang Nianwei. Why? Fu Shilu glanced at the seat next to her, wanting to see how jealous she was. Sheng Youxia's face was illuminated by the warm sun. If Liang Nianwei smells this, she will definitely make trouble with you, and she will definitely cry. Fu Shilu sneered, she is not you. Sheng Youxia turned her face away from the window, not wanting to show any emotion in front of Fu Shilu. What's this perfume smell? Sheng Youxia had found lipstick and stockings in Fu Shilu's car before, and they were placed in a very conspicuous position. He knew that she cared and minded, but he didn't shy away from it. He said something good. She knew that this was a fire pit and she had to jump in, so she had to bear the consequences of being burned by the fire. Don't worry, I will never do that again. If it weren't for the fact that the cornea issue had not been settled, she would have been in a divorce lawsuit with him. When they arrived at the Fu family, the door of the manor villa was open. The car drove all the way to the main hall door. As soon as it stopped, a figure rushed over. Brother, sister-in-law. Sheng Youxia pushed the car door and got out. Cici, happy birthday. Thank you, my beauty, let me hug you. Fusai coveted his sister-in-law's beauty every day, and he wanted to take her photo to the hospital to get her to look like Sheng Youxia. I have prepared a gift for you, I'll get it for you. Okay. Fusai did not follow, but walked around the front of the car to the driver's seat. As soon as Fu Shilu got out of the car, she grabbed his arm. Brother, did you just come out of the fox den? What do you mean? Fusai bent down and got into the car. There's a foul smell. Fu Shilu didn't expect her to speak so uncivilized, and was immediately a little unhappy. Sigh. This is not the smell of perfume, it stinks. Anyway, this is not the smell of my sister-in-law, I'm going to complain to my mother. Fu Shilu pulled her away and closed the car door. The car was lent to Ji Xingtang last night, and he returned it to me this morning. He finished speaking and looked behind the car. Sheng Youxia was taking something in the back, so at such a short distance, she might have heard it. Fusai quickly came to her side and took the gift from Sheng Youxia. Chanel CF Black Gold Boule, nearly 60,000. Oh, Fusai screamed. Although the Fu family was not short of money, she couldn't afford such an expensive bag with her own pocket money. Sister-in-law, my love for you is like a surging river. Sheng Youxia couldn't help laughing and gently pinched her face. There are still a lot of things, help me carry them. Okay. Fu Shilu also came to help. Sheng Youxia brought gifts for everyone. She was decent and generous, and no one could find fault with her. The brother and sister walked behind, and Fusai deliberately slowed down. Brother, can you be nicer to sister-in-law? Be careful that she will run away one day. Fu Shilu didn't care. She had used a lot of tricks to marry him. Impossible. Don't be too confident. Fu Shilu chuckled, I'm so confident. Others might run away, but she wouldn't. Fu Qingxing and Qin Jin were both there. Sheng Youxia entered the house and greeted them. Dad, Mom, we're here. Xia, you're finally here. Qin Jin had already gone to greet them while he was talking. Why did you bring so many things again? I got 2 pieces of excellent tea cakes a few days ago, and I left one for Dad, and the spices I gave you last time, I think they should be almost used up, right? The old couple was happy to see Sheng Youxia, and they didn't even look at Fu Shilu. The man sat on the sofa, thinking that Sheng Youxia was always trying to please him. She was not a good person behind his back, otherwise how could she give him medicine? There were 2 buildings in the Fu family manor. The one next to the main building was not inhabited, and it would only be opened and lit when there was a family banquet. After dinner, Sheng Youxia went to decorate it herself. She ordered cakes and flowers, and brought a few servants to inflate balloons inside. Fu Shilu sat in the yard, watching her go in and out, the sound of her high heels hitting the ground, clacking. The man's hand that was flipping through the magazine paused slightly, and his eyes followed her, and saw that her heel was already red. Sheng Youxia seemed to be unaware of the pain, or she was just trying to endure it. The people who set up the dessert table came over, and Sheng Youxia led them inside. Fu Shilu read for a long time, but didn't turn a page of the magazine. When he entered the room, he saw Sheng Youxia checking the dessert list, and Fu Shilu pulled her aside. He threw the slippers in his hand to her feet, changed them. Chapter 13. Want to kiss her? Sheng Youxia looked down, but had no intention of raising her legs. No need. Fu Shilu looked at her legs. Her ankles were as thin as his wrists, and he could just hold them with one hand. The two long legs outside the Chanel suit were delicate and graceful. But didn't she find that her heels were bleeding? My mother asked me to bring it here. Oh, I'd better not change it. Cease's guests will be here soon. Sheng Youxia would not allow others to see her walking around in slippers. Her stepmother had been chasing her with a ruler since she was a child. Her words and deeds were related to the face of the Sheng family. This woman was too stubborn. When Fu Shilu returned to the yard, he saw Qin Jin walking over with a pair of shoes. Where's Xia? Inside. Qin Jin reached out to stop his son, who was the woman who went on the cruise with you that day. Fu Shilu's eyebrows were firm, and he only said 2 words, friend. Qin Jin slapped him hard on the back. If you dare to do something to let Xia down, I'll break that woman's legs. Mom, even if Sheng Youxia and I really can't get along, it has nothing to do with others. This kind of words is just enough to fool a 3-year-old child. I don't care, you have been married for a year, and your relationship is stable. If there is any problem in the future, it will be the fault of that woman. Fu Shilu raised a sneer at the corner of his eyes. How can you tell that our relationship is stable? The more Qin Jin looked at his son, the more he felt that he was a wooden fish head that could not be knocked open. When she was 9 years old, her father remarried. You have seen Xia's stepmother before. She is a powerful character. Qin Jin thought to himself, aren't you a doctor? Don't doctors have a heart of bodhisattva? If being tough with him doesn't work, then try being soft. My daughter-in-law is so pitiful. She has been beaten so many times since she was a child. She married into the Fu family thinking that she would be protected. Who would have thought that my husband doesn't like her? Fu Shilu took the shoes from her hand, a pair of flat-heeled lambskin shoes, soft and light. He didn't go in immediately, but went back to the main building. Sheng Youxia asked the servant to hang the balloon on the wall. She heard footsteps coming. Before she could see the man's appearance clearly, she was pulled by the arm to walk to the bathroom. The man turned on the light, closed the door with his backhand, and put the lambskin shoes aside. Fu Shilu, what are you doing? He pinched her waist with both hands and lifted her up easily. Sheng Youxia sat on the sink. The cold surface stimulated her to jump off. Fu Shilu held her legs. Do you like stilt walking so much? He squatted down and held her shoes with one hand. No wonder they rubbed her feet, the edges of the shoes were so hard. Fu Shilu threw the stiletto heels aside and turned her feet to look. The skin was worn and bleeding. You will suffer for your own sins. Sheng Youxia said stubbornly, but it looks good. How can it look good? You might as well wear a pair of cloth shoes to hurt your feet like this. Sheng Youxia didn't say anything else. She remembered that Liang Nianwei, who she saw on the cruise ship that day, was wearing a pair of yellowed white shoes. He let her put it on his thigh, tore off a band-aid, and stuck her heel. Sheng Youxia was not used to such an intimate move. She subconsciously wanted to retract her legs, but Fu Shilu pressed her instep with his palm. Her toes were white, and the blue veins on the instep of her foot were faintly throbbing under his palm. Fu Shilu took the pair of flat shoes and put them on her. Are you feeling better now? Where did you get the shoes? Fu Shilu also treated the wound on her other foot. Mom prepared them. It's also a big brand. Although it doesn't have the aura of high heels, it's not painful to wear. Mom is still good to me. Fu Shilu snorted coldly between the wings of his nose and raised his eyes slightly upward. He was originally going to look at Sheng Youxia's face. But his half-squatting perspective swept across her legs. Sheng Youxia was wearing a suit, and the hem of her skirt was running up, and her legs were slightly apart because of her sitting posture. She noticed that the man's eyes were fixed on the inside of her thigh. The door of the bathroom was pushed open by someone, and Fu Sai leaned half of his body in. Brother, what are you doing? Sheng Youxia hurriedly put her legs together. Fu Shilu stood up, but supported his arms on Sheng Youxia's side. He leaned forward and she was almost held in his arms. I want to have a private conversation with your sister-in-law. Fu Sai's eyes flickered between the two people's faces. You are so funny. You have to choose a different place to have a private conversation. Sheng Youxia pushed her arm in front of Fu Shilu, trying to get off the sink. She turned her face towards the door, and Fu Shilu moved his face closer, looking like he wanted to kiss her, but his mouth didn't touch her. Sheng Youxia's face flushed unconvincingly, and she quickly turned her head to the other side. This shameless man followed her quickly, rubbing his nose against her, "Isn't this place good?" Fu Sai saw the high heels taken off next to him, and instantly imagined a lot of passionate scenes. "You continue, I didn't see anything." She slammed the door shut, and Sheng Youxia saw the man stand up and retract his arm. "You will make others misunderstand that we are very respectful and have a good relationship." Fu Shilu nodded. "This loudspeaker is the best at conveying information. Grandpa likes to hear good things from us. Is it possible that as long as he can make the old man happy, he is willing to sell his body?" Sheng Youxia got off the sink, and the sharp pain in her heel had eased a lot. Fu Sai was just a freshman, and he invited students from the same school. It was a lively group of people. "I want to introduce my sister-in-law to you. I said she is more beautiful than a female star. Do you believe it this time? I used to say that you were bragging, but it turns out you are not. Sister-in-law is so beautiful, especially beautiful." Sheng Youxia raised the corner of her mouth and invited them to eat and drink. Two girls were taking pictures with Polaroid cameras. "Sister-in-law, how about taking a photo with you?" Sheng Youxia saw the girl who was talking and glanced at Fu Shilu. She realized that the word "you" referred to her and Fu Shilu. "No need." She hastily refused. When Sheng Youxia got married, she didn't even take wedding photos because Fu Shilu said he didn't like them. "Brother." Fu Sai stamped his feet and waved at him. "Take one, and you can take the photos right away. It's fun." Sheng Youxia heard the sound of footsteps coming, and Fu Shilu's tall figure stood beside her. There was always an indelible sense of oppression. She was actually looking forward to it, wanting to see what kind of picture the perfect match in the eyes of others would be reflected in the photo. "Sister-in-law, please hold my brother's hand and lean your head on his shoulder." Sheng Youxia was stunned and didn't move. Fu Sai simply pushed her lightly, and Sheng Youxia's shoulder hit Fu Shilu. But she clearly felt that the man took a step aside. No more photos. Chapter 14: Forced Kiss. The girl holding the camera was a little embarrassed, and Sheng Youxia felt embarrassed too. He actually didn't have to do anything, even standing with his hands behind his back would only take 3 seconds. Fu Sai was so angry that his face was crooked. Sheng Youxia had to stand up. "You guys have fun, we won't disturb you." She pulled Fu Sai aside and whispered, "When the time is over, I have prepared a small gift for everyone, don't forget to let them take it." Fu Sai just opened it and saw that it was a bottle of Gucci perfume. She was touched and happy. Sheng Youxia really gave her enough face. "Thank you, sister-in-law." She felt that her brother didn't deserve such a good person. On their way back to the main building, Sheng Youxia followed Fu Shilu very slowly. Sometimes, she felt that he was like a distant firework, more like a calm and emotionless Buddhist. "Walking so slowly, are you walking the dog?" Sheng Youxia looked at him, and Fu Shilu realized that this was wrong. Who was he comparing to a dog? She walked past him with a tired look on her face, and Fu Shilu's nose was filled with a clear fragrance. "Do you want to take a photo?" Sheng Youxia paused. In fact, it was meaningless to think about it. If she couldn't keep him, would she take a photo to commemorate him? "It's not that I can't refuse such a kind offer. I want to give some face to Cease's friends." She felt a relaxed and complicated sense of relief in her heart. Fu Shilu stared into her eyes. Sheng Youxia loved him deeply, and he knew it. But now the love in these eyes didn't seem to be so deep. During dinner, Mr. Fu was in good spirits and kept talking to Sheng Youxia. "My friend, Grandpa Huang, you have also seen him. His great-grandson is 2 years old and can run all over the ground." Sheng Youxia knew the old man's heart not, so she could only comfort him at this time. "Grandpa, don't worry. Maybe I will get pregnant with twins soon, so you can win in terms of numbers." Old man Fu laughed loudly. "I love to hear this the most. Xia understands me." Sheng Youxia saw that everyone had put down their chopsticks, so she helped the old man to sit on the sofa. Old man Fu had an old injury on his arm and had undergone a major operation. His left arm was obviously thinner. Sheng Youxia pinched him, looking focused, and the strength in her hands was just right. People can't be compared. The old man looked at Fu Shilu and found fault with him. "You haven't gotten pregnant after a year of marriage. Xia must be fine. I think it's you. Have you seen a doctor?" Fu Shilu was playing with his mobile phone with his head down. It seemed that he was sending a message to someone. He didn't even raise his head. "Grandpa, how can you be sure that the problem is with me?" The old man snorted coldly. "I can see it from your face. Qin Jin sat next to him and looked at his son's face carefully. Shilu, you have to listen to Grandpa, it won't hurt to see a doctor more often. At this time, Sheng Youxia acted as a good person and stood up to help Fu Shilu out. Grandpa, Mom, don't worry. Shilu has seen a doctor, it should be fine. Exclamation point. Fu Shilu raised his eyelids suddenly, and his eyes were like a knife that could stab people. Some worry surged across Qin Jin's face. Has he seen a doctor? If there is really no problem, do you need to go to the hospital? Old man Fu didn't say much, after all, men have to save face. It's okay, then listen to the doctor, take the medicine obediently, and don't delay your parents from holding their grandchildren. Fu Shilu didn't know how to explain, so he had to keep a cold face and didn't say anything. The old man leaned on the sofa for a while and fell asleep. Fu Shilu saw Sheng Youxia was still pinching his hand. The most important reason why the elders of the Fu family liked her so much was that she was filial. Qin Jin saw that the time was almost up, so he asked them to go back first. No need to say goodbye to Grandpa, drive slowly on the road. Okay. Sheng Youxia sat in the passenger seat, her right hand was sore from the long massage. When Fu Shilu started the car, he saw that she was pinching the tiger's mouth. Is your hand sore? Sheng Youxia didn't expect him to reach out and hold her hand in his palm. He controlled the steering wheel with one hand, and his cuffs were folded on his muscular arms. Sheng Youxia came to her senses and wanted to pull her hand back, but the man's fingers passed through her fingers and clenched. Sheng Youxia's next sentence was a bit disappointing. Everyone in the family likes me, why is it that only you can't? Fu Shilu seemed to increase the speed of the car. Is it not enough that they like you? With just this, you can secure your position as the young lady of the Fu family. Really? Sheng Youxia leaned her head against the pillow, that makes sense. As long as I don't abdicate, you will all be concubines. What a fallacy. Fu Shilu's mouth curled up slightly. After driving for a while, he thought of settling accounts with her. What do you mean by what you said in front of Grandpa? I'm saying something good for you, you can't even hear that. Sheng Youxia yawned lightly. She had hardly been free all day, and her eyes squinted with sleepiness. I'll sleep for a while. You still won't stay at home tonight, right? Then remember to wake me up when you get home. She fell asleep before she finished the second half of the sentence. Fu Shilu was waiting for the red light in front, his arms resting on his sides, his upper body slightly tilted to the right, and he felt a weight on his shoulders. Sheng Youxia's hair fell down like silk, covering half of her face. She has a beautiful face. Fu Shilu's heart was shocked for no reason. Back at Zizuan, Sheng Youxia was still asleep. Fu Shilu quickly came to the passenger side, unbuckled her seat belt and wanted to carry her out. As soon as his arm touched her waist, Sheng Youxia woke up immediately. Subconsciously, he pushed him. Not familiar, we are not familiar. The man frowned and put his hand on the back of the chair. Who are you not familiar with? Sheng Youxia leaned her face towards his arm. You. She was right. Apart from the intimate relationship in bed, they were not familiar with each other. Sheng Youxia's face was suddenly held by a hand that stretched out, and then, the fingers lifted her chin. He kissed fiercely, with a strong posture, and stretched out his arm on the car door. At this time, Sheng Youxia looked like a weak person. As if it would break if he rubbed it hard. Sheng Youxia reached out to push him, but Fu Shilu simply reached for the button on the seat. Her body was laid flat, and the man took advantage of the situation to get in. We're already at the doorstep, can't you just be honest? Sheng Youxia felt wronged. How am I not honest? What did I say that aroused your animal nature? Fu Shilu's throat rolled, and a heavy desire gradually emerged from the condescending pressure. Fu Shilu, this is the doorstep. Sheng Youxia was afraid that he would show the crazy energy he had in bed. At this moment, a phone call saved her. Fu Shilu looked at the caller ID and stepped out of the car to answer it. Sheng Youxia hurriedly got up and took a tissue and was about to wipe her mouth. But she didn't expect the man to turn around and point his finger at her in the air. Don't wipe it. The ravaged lips were so beautiful and beautiful. Chapter 15 Provoking the Rival. Colleagues at the hospital planned to ask Fu Shilu for help. That colleague's relative transferred from Suzhou and wanted to jump the queue and ask Fu Shilu to arrange an operation for him, but he was ruthlessly rejected. Sheng Youxia leaned against the car door and saw the man hang up the phone. She shook her head slightly. This guy was really a bitch. Liang Nianwei came to treat her eye disease, but not only could she not afford the medical expenses, she also wanted him to solve the problem of her cornea. Didn't he agree to it happily? Sheng Youxia returned to their house and went upstairs directly. Hearing the sound of water in the bathroom, she walked into the cloakroom and prepared the clothes that Fu Shilu would wear tomorrow. Pulling open a drawer on one side, Sheng Youxia took out a stick of incense and lit it. The Sheng family is in the spice business, and no one knows this industry better than her. The mysterious aroma is very penetrating, like pumice but with a fresh fragrance. Fu Shilu didn't like strong smells. This was the new scent mixed by Sheng Youxia. When he put on his clothes to go to the hospital the next day, he could hardly smell the scent on his clothes. But women are very sensitive. For example, at this moment, Liang Nianwei was lying quietly on the hospital bed. She sniffed lightly, and the faint scent of pears seemed to be blooming on the branches, with a little bit of a declaration of sovereignty. Dr. Fu, I want to go for a walk around the neighborhood with my mother this afternoon, is that okay? Fu Shilu put the pen in his hand into his pocket and said, okay, but don't overwork yourself. Although Liang Nianwei couldn't see, she still looked up at him. Dr. Fu, guess who is the first person I want to see after I regain my sight? Men should all be happy with this. Fu Shilu's voice sounded much softer than usual, your parents. Liang Nianwei smiled, her voice as clear as a silver bell, I know what they look like, I want to see if you look like me. Liang's mother was sitting nearby. When she heard this, she stood up. Dr. Fu, can you take a photo with Nianwei? When she can see, she can know what our savior looks like. Fu Shilu was still holding the medical records from the ward rounds in his hand. The lenses on his nose had no prescription, but they appropriately blocked the sharpness in his eyes. I'm her attending physician. She'll be able to see me after I finish the surgery. Liang's mother looked embarrassed, but still wanted to fight for it. Dr. Fu, we don't have any other intentions. Sometimes, all we ask for is just a wish. We are truly grateful to you. Liang Nianwei didn't hear Fu Shilu say anything, and knew that he definitely didn't want to. Mom, please don't embarrass me. Seeing her cautious look, Fu Shilu agreed. Liang's mother happily took her phone and ran to the end of the bed to stand. The nurse beside her also turned on the camera and said, I'm a pretty good photographer. I can take pictures for you, too. Fu Shilu moved closer to Liang Nianwei and his arm seemed to touch her. The scent from his collar was refreshing. The nurse took a simple photo of them and said, when you can see again, you will be impressed by Director Fu's handsomeness. He is so handsome and outstanding. Fu Shilu also has a nice voice, with a sexiness that others can hardly match. Have you finished filming? Okay, it's handsome. The nurse didn't think much about it. After all, there were many patients who wanted to take photos with doctors. Liang Nianwei's face flushed as she walked out following the footsteps. Liang's mother handed her the phone and said, when you two stand together, you look like a perfect match. I wish he was my son-in-law. And a director. Liang Nianwei didn't respond, her fingertips touching the phone. Sheng Youxia was busy in her studio until the evening. When she was about to leave, our express delivery was delivered to the front desk. It was a very thin envelope. When I opened it, a photo fell out. Sheng Youxia bent down to pick it up, but before her fingertips touched it, she saw the photo of Fu Shilu and Liang Nianwei. The two of them snuggled together, very affectionate. It felt like a thorn was stuck in her eye and the pain was unbearable. The newly hired receptionist wanted to come over to help, Mr. Sheng, something fell. Fine. She quickly picked up the photo and put it in her bag. Sheng Youxia was very absent-minded on their way back by car. She took out the photo and looked at it again in a self-mutilating manner. He was so reluctant to do something with her, but he could make an exception for Liang Nianwei. The phone rang. It was Tang Hui calling. Xia, are you home yet? Come out and have a drink. Tang Hui didn't have much hope. Sheng Youxia almost never drinks alcohol, saying that alcohol would destroy his sensitivity to aromas. But this time she agreed straightforwardly, okay, where is it? I'll send you the location and wait for you. After Sheng Youxia threw the photo back, he drove straight to find Tang Hui. Royal Hongju is a place that costs a lot of money. Tang Hui did not ask for a private room, saying it was boring, and directly ordered the high consumption area on the top floor. The admission fee for that floor is based on the number of people, and 10,000 renminbi per person is just the entrance fee. Tang Hui went to the door to meet her, we have to get drunk tonight. Don't hang yourself on a tree. Find a handsome guy to go home and make Fu go a cuckold. It was the first time that Sheng Youxia stepped onto the top floor. The layout of this place was completely different from that of the downstairs. The lights are bright, and in this place where money is everything, love and sex are displayed on the stage in a high-profile manner. Whether it is a pure and self-restrained woman or a man with evil thoughts, they all want to drag each other to the bed and have sex together. Sheng Youxia sat down in the booth and saw someone dancing passionately in the middle of the round stage. Tang Hui had already ordered the wine and put her little hand on her shoulder. What's wrong? You look unhappy. Sheng Youxia was still thinking about the photo. It's okay. Tang Hui didn't disturb her, but just hugged her tighter. Fuck, Xia, look. It's your husband. Tang Hui had never expected that there would be such a coincidence in the world. Across the huge round table, she saw several guests arriving at the booth opposite, including Fu Shilu. The men had just sat down and hadn't seen the two of them yet. Ji Xingtang answered a call and leaned over to Fu Shilu. Director Fu, Liang Nianwei is here, please go and pick her up. Sheng Youxia couldn't hear their conversation, but she could see that Fu Shilu's expression had become much colder. Who asked her to come here? Ji Xingtang saw this and thought, is this flattery? I thought she would be bored in the hospital and might get depressed, wouldn't it be nice to take her out to play more? Fu Shilu glared at him and walked out quickly. Seeing this, Ji Xingtang followed behind him. Tang Hui had a puzzled look on her face, leaving now. Sheng Youxia raised the corner of his mouth slightly, maybe he went to pick someone up. Tang Hui's mind worked quickly, could it be that vixen? Damn, if Fu Shilu dares, we will peel off her fox skin in public. This is a provocation right in front of us. Chapter 16, The Fox Spirit and the Dog, Jumping Up and Down. The entrance of Royal Hongju. Liang's mother stood in the cold wind with Liang Nianwei. Here he comes, here he comes. When Liang's mother saw Fu Shilu, she waved her hand. Fu Shilu saw Liang Nianwei wearing a scarf, but it was windy outside and her hair was messed up. Director Fu, I'll leave Nianwei to you. I'll go back to the hospital first. Liang's mother said as she was about to leave. Fu Shilu called her and said, it's too late, take her back to rest. Ji Xingtang felt embarrassed. He originally thought that Fu Shilu would be very happy. My lovely little Weiwei, Shilu has already scolded me, saying that I led you astray and shouldn't have let you come to this kind of place. Ji Xingtang said, stepping forward and grabbing Liang Nianwei's arm, as compensation, I'll take you back to the hospital. But Liang Nianwei stood there without moving, her smile as gentle as the warm sunshine in spring. Dr. Fu, don't blame him. I stayed in the hospital because of my own imagination. Besides, Cousin Xing treated me as a friend, that's why he invited me here. Ji Xingtang thought that little Weiwei was very considerate. Did you hear that? Besides, we are all here. What are you afraid of? Fu Shilu's brows did not relax, he just felt that Liang Nianwei was not suitable here. Dr. Fu, can I go back before 11? I'll follow you after I go in and won't run around. Liang Nianwei had an expectant look on her face. She had never been to Royal Hongju before and was quite curious. Sheng Youxia took the bottle on the table and was pouring wine. When Tang Hui saw Fu Shilu leading Liang Nianwei in, she couldn't help herself. She wanted to get up, but was held down by Sheng Youxia. Didn't you say there was some fresh meat here? Where is he? Sheng Youxia said, holding a glass of wine to her lips, instead of feeling sad for others, it's better to make yourself happy. Tang Hui nodded continuously, I totally agree. Liang Nianwei is blind and has difficulty walking, so Fu Shilu gently holds her wrist and leads her to sit on the sofa. Xiao Rui handed Fu Shilu a cigarette, but he blocked it with his arm. No, and you are not allowed to smoke either. Why? Then what's the point of playing? Ji Xingtang understood, are you afraid that our smoke will smoke Xiao Weiwei? Could it make her eyes even more blind? Fu Shilu looked forward inadvertently and saw a pair of bare thighs in the center of the stage. Smog can irritate the blood vessels in the eyes, causing the blood vessels in the retina to shrink and thicken. Okay, Ji Xingtang endured it. This also made him more convinced that Liang Nianwei was Fu Shilu's sweetheart. The women on the stage finished dancing and then went downstairs. It was like a fig leaf covering his face, which was suddenly torn away. A familiar figure appeared in Fu Shilu's eyes. It turned out to be Sheng Youxia. She held up the wine glass and made a toasting gesture to him. What was she doing? Tang Hui, what do you think Fu Shilu's reaction would be if I went there now? Angry or nervous? I really don't know, how about we give it a try? She just said it casually. Sheng Youxia probably didn't have the courage to do it. She loved Fu Shilu so deeply that she had many concerns. But Tang Hui felt that the seat next to her seemed to move, and when she raised her eyes, she only saw Sheng Youxia's back. She was afraid that her sisters would suffer, so she hurriedly followed behind. A group of people were joking, saying that Xiao Weiwei was a good name, and Ji Xingtang was the most enthusiastic among them. Our director Fu is a flower on the mountain top, and Xiao Weiwei is a crepe myrtle, a perfect match. He turned his head and saw Sheng Youxia standing a few steps away, staring at him with a smile. Ji Xingtang hiccuped in fear. The atmosphere suddenly became weird. Most of these men were worried about Liang Nianwei and didn't even dare to call her sister-in-law. Sheng Youxia held her elbow with her palm, their wine in the glass swaying. Ji Xingtang, can you tell me in detail, how compatible are they? Tang Hui wanted to say, the fox spirit and the dog are jumping up and down. But when she met Fu Shilu's eyes, they were as cold as if they were covered with a layer of ice. His background was too powerful and she couldn't afford to offend him, so Tang Hui chose to keep silent. No matter how blind Liang Nianwei was, she could still sense that something was wrong. What happened? She turned her face away from Fu Shilu, looking innocent and even more pitiful. Fu Shilu retracted his gaze and said, "It's okay, I met an acquaintance." This was cruel enough. He didn't say that Sheng Youxia was his wife, which meant that he didn't want Liang Nianwei to know at all. Ji Xingtang and the others were making faces and looked like they were just there to watch the fun. Sheng Youxia sneered, and Tang Hui was afraid that she would not be able to hold back and would cry, "Xia Xia." Sheng Youxia took a sip of wine, her lips shimmering, and she bent down slightly. Director Fu, you were too forceful last time and broke the condom. But I listened to you and took my medicine. You haven't asked me out recently. Do you have a new love? Hiss. I don't know who it was, but I gasped. Tang Hui opened her mouth and said, "Ahahaha. They are indeed a real couple. They can talk about this topic without blushing or getting nervous." Fu Shilu locked her eyes with Sheng Youxia. She shrugged lightly, "It's the usual appointment. I'm free tonight too." Liang Nianwei tried her best to keep calm on her face, but her lips were trembling. She was shy and felt a little overwhelmed sitting in the crowd. Sheng Youxia turned around and walked back. Tang Hui deliberately raised her voice and said, "Those who make women take medicine are not good people. You, open your eyes." She was implying something about the little blind man. I wonder if Liang Nianwei could understand. Ji Xingtang couldn't swallow this breath, and stood up from the sofa. "Come on, bring me the best wine you have. Mr. Fu is happy tonight, so the tip will be doubled." The smell of alcohol was surging in Sheng Youxia's chest, and he felt a little dizzy when he sat down in his seat. She couldn't drink much, and if she saw correctly, Fu Shilu's eyes were always on her. Next to each booth, there was a young man serving as waiter. He walked up to Sheng Youxia and said, "Beautiful lady, would you like to order a set meal?" Sheng Youxia's voice was soft and tender. She propped up her face with one hand and looked at him. "What kind of packages are there?" Fu Shilu saw that after she drank a few sips of wine, her cheeks turned red and her eyes were sparkling when she looked at people. The light shone on his gloomy face, and every expression on his face showed displeasure. Ji Xingtang shouted again, "Order 2 more dances, come on." Sheng Youxia rubbed his brow with his fingers. "Which is the most expensive set meal here?" The man was delighted when he heard this. "It's the Imperial Concubine set meal. I guarantee you'll be satisfied." "Okay, I want this concubine." The man was so excited that he placed an order for Sheng Youxia in front of her. "Have a good time. I'll arrange it right away." Sheng Youxia doesn't enjoy herself as much as Fu Shilu on weekdays, so tonight she wants to satisfy herself and see what it feels like to be a royal concubine. As the lights dimmed, the music started. A parachute platform slowly descended from overhead. Sheng Youxia looked closely and a group of shirtless muscular handsome men came into view. Their white, carnal smell was too strong. Sheng Youxia quickly looked away. "Who are these?" Tang Hui stared straight ahead, her saliva almost flowing out. "Xia Xia, they seem to be coming for you." Chapter 17, Beaten. Royal Rainbow gave their imperial concubine enough ceremony. They were of standard height of 1.80 meters and had model-like figures. Sheng Youxia roughly counted them and found there were 10 of them. The man in charge of all this came back and stood next to Sheng Youxia. These people don't show up on weekdays. All the guests on the top floor tonight are thanks to you. Tang Hui liked this kind of talk. With this body, his abdominal muscles must be rock hard. You can touch it as you like, and the money is included in the package. Sheng Youxia covered her eyes. Tang Hui had already stood up excitedly. The group of people came up to them, all wearing very low-waisted pants. Not only is the mermaid line fully revealed, but even the hip line can be seen. Tang Hui was surrounded by handsome men and touched them with her left and right hands. So silky. Shia, come and touch it, it's free anyway. Several male models crossed over the coffee table that was in their way and stood next to Sheng Youxia, with their lower bodies almost touching her face. Liang Nianwei sat opposite her, and she could feel the rapidity of Fu Shilu's breathing. Dr. Fu, how about we go back? It's too noisy here, making her feel uneasy. Ji Xingtang snorted coldly. She really knows how to enjoy herself. Do you know how much this package costs? She can buy a car with this money. Liang Nianwei had no idea before, but now she understands. The world of the rich is so luxurious. Her family doesn't even have the money for an eye surgery, but someone like Sheng Youxia is really good at squandering. Fu Shilu's eyes were dark, and the bottom of the pool was filled with coldness. He met Sheng Youxia's gaze. Nianwei, you don't have to be so polite to me outside. You don't have to call me Dr. Fu. Liang Nianwei twisted her hands together. Then what should I call you? Ji Xingtang yelled, call my name, Shilu. The tune is deliberately prolonged, and it sounds very cheap. Liang Nianwei felt a little embarrassed, even her ears turned red, her lips trembled and she couldn't open her mouth. Fu Shilu said, you don't have to be so reserved with me. She calmed down and slowly loosened her twisted fingers. Okay, Shilu. Sheng Youxia picked up the wine on the table, and the figure reflected in the glass looked a little distorted. Tang Hui pushed a male model to the side of Sheng Youxia. Serve our young boss well, and you will be rewarded tonight. When the man sat down, his shoulder lightly touched Sheng Youxia. His body temperature was hot and his voice was pleasant. What reward? Sheng Youxia turned her head to look at him. Give me some money. I need someone, is that okay? The male model's actions were bold. Although he did not directly reach out to hug her, his raised arms gave people the illusion that he was about to take Sheng Youxia into his arms. The cell phone in her pocket suddenly rang. Sheng Youxia took it out and saw that it was Fu Shilu. She didn't answer and hung up. But soon, he called again. Sheng Youxia simply turned the phone to silent mode and stuffed it into her bag. The male model was still eager to try, and wanted to take her down tonight. But Sheng Youxia poked him with her finger, stopping him from taking another step. Drink wine. That's enough. She will have to file for divorce later. It would be very disadvantageous to her if Fu Shilu got hold of her evidence. There were men with bare upper bodies sitting on both sides of Sheng Youxia. She was wearing a basic black top. The collision of these two scenes was filled with a sense of violation. Seeing that Liang Nianwei was a good girl, Ji Xingtang asked for a glass of juice for her. She sat on the sidelines, obviously left out. Shilu, I want to go to the bathroom. He saw Liang Nianwei stand up, hesitating, not knowing where to go. Fu Shilu was not in a position to accompany her, so he asked Ji Xingtang's female companion to follow her and take good care of her. Don't worry, Mr. Fu. Tang Hui on the opposite side saw it all, and she finally waited until Liang Nianwei was left alone. The bathroom on the top floor was elegantly decorated, and the floor tiles were shiny enough to let one see reflections underfoot. After the woman sent Liang Nianwei in, she waited for her outside. But just as she was about to smoke a cigarette, she was called away by a phone call. Liang Nianwei could hardly move in the unfamiliar place and could only grope her way around with her hands. She heard the sound of high heels approaching, getting closer and closer, and finally stopping in front of her. Liang Nianwei tried to make way, but was slapped in the face. She staggered from the blow. Then, her hair was grabbed by someone, and her face was pulled up so that she could only look up. Who are you? Why are you hitting people? You little vixen, you're really good at pretending. I'm warning you, stay away from Fu Shilu. Didn't your mother teach you about propriety, righteousness, and honor? You'll get your comeuppance for being a mistress. Liang Nianwei's scalp was almost torn off, and her eyes were red. I didn't, and I don't understand what you are saying. Well, I'll tell you clearly that Fu Shilu has a wife. If you keep pretending to be so pitiful, I'll scratch your face. Liang Nianwei was pushed on the shoulder and crashed into the sink behind her. She listened to the footsteps leaving, holding her waist with one hand, unable to scream in pain. She lingered inside for a long time before going out. The woman who brought her here had also returned. Seeing her come out, she didn't think much and said, "Let's go." Liang Nianwei covered her face with her hair. As soon as she sat back next to Fu Shilu, she said, "Let's go back. I'm a little tired." Fu Shilu saw that she had her head lowered, and something seemed to be wrong. He reached out and brushed away the hair on her cheek. Liang Nianwei was so startled that she wanted to dodge, but it was too late. Half of her face was red and swollen, with crisscross marks from slaps, which was shocking to see. "What's going on?" Even Sheng Youxia on the opposite side heard Fu Shilu's stern shout. Liang Nianwei quickly covered her face with her hair again. Ji Xingtang also saw it and pulled her female companion. "She was beaten. Weren't you with her?" "I don't know. My friend called me via video and I went to answer it. It only takes a few minutes." "Xia Weiwei, who beat you up like this? Tell your brother and I'll help you vent your anger." Liang Nianwei shook her head. She couldn't see, so how could she see who moved the hand? Tang Hui was trying to hold back her laughter on the opposite side. She should have slapped her a few more times just now. "Xia, I vented your anger for you, it feels so good." Sheng Youxia saw Fu Shilu stand up from the sofa. He held Liang Nianwei's wrist and led her over. Tang Hui snorted, "Am I afraid of her? Don't admit that it was you who did it later." Sheng Youxia lowered his voice, fearing that Tang Hui would lose her temper. Fu Shilu came up to them and instead of questioning them, he told the men to get out. But the person they were going to serve tonight was Sheng Youxia, so they didn't move at all. Fu Shilu's voice was filled with anger. "Sheng Youxia, I'm giving you face." She put down her glass and stood up, asking everyone around her to leave first. Liang Nianwei half hid behind Fu Shilu, like a little white rabbit that had just been abused. Fu Shilu's eyes were sharp, and his words were like sharp knives. "You did it." Chapter 18. Spend his money and play with men. "You're talking to me," Sheng Youxia said calmly. "I've been sitting here the whole time and never left." Fu Shilu's gaze shifted to Tang Hui's face. She was quite proud of herself, with her red hair standing out very flamboyantly. "Fu Shilu, why are you looking at me? Do you want to say that I did it?" Ji Xingtang also came over. He couldn't bear to see Liang Nianwei being bullied. "Xia Weiwei, show them, is the person who did this a human being? Such a pretty face was beaten like this." Tang Hui saw the criss-cross fingerprints on Liang Nianwei's face, and she frowned slightly, a little confused. Did she hit him that many times? How could she remember and just slap her? Fu Shilu should have seen Tang Hui leave halfway. "If you have anything to say, come to me, don't bully her because she can't see." "Oh." Sheng Youxia continued Fu Shilu's words, "That means she couldn't see who beat him. Are there any witnesses at the scene?" Ji Xingtang pointed his finger in front of Tang Hui and said, "Xia Weiwei left not long ago, and she followed." "Why, I'm not going to the bathroom, am I going to spill it on your head?" Anyway, in Fu Shilu's opinion, Liang Nianwei is a little white flower. Sheng Youxia and Tang Hui are in the same group and are poisonous. Sheng Youxia didn't get hysterical and fight with him. "Ms. Liang, when you were beaten, did you hear any sound? Did the other party say anything to you?" Tang Hui is not afraid of her complaining. Isn't it wrong for her to call her a mistress? Fu Shilu turned to look at her sideways. The finger marks on her face were painful to look at. "Don't be afraid. I will help you." Sheng Youxia lowered her arms and slowly clenched her fingertips. "Yeah, Xia Weiwei, that person couldn't have said nothing, right?" Liang Nianwei's face was pale. She must have been frightened. She shook her head. "She just hit me a few times but didn't he say a word?" Sheng Youxia looked at Tang Hui beside her. Tang Hui also found it unbelievable and raised her eyebrows. But Fu Shilu felt that she couldn't take this beating in vain. If that's the case, then call the police. He is not afraid of making things embarrassing, and everyone knows it, so what else does Sheng Youxia have to be afraid of? "How about this, let's check the surveillance first. We'll definitely be able to capture someone going in at the bathroom door. Maybe, we can even hear what they say inside." As soon as Sheng Youxia finished speaking, Liang Nianwei raised her hand and grabbed Fu Shilu's arm. My eyes hurt so much and my head hurts. I don't want to pursue this anymore. I want to go back to the hospital. Her face was so swollen, her eyes were probably not spared either, so Fu Shilu had to send her back quickly. Sheng Youxia sat on the sofa, and Tang Hui's eyes were full of joy. Xia, we won, right? She got beaten for nothing, and she still can't say anything about her suffering. This is the fate of a mistress, being beaten by the original wife. But Sheng Youxia felt the clear pain as she sat there. As long as Fu Shilu didn't love her, she couldn't win. Isn't he it? She took a glass of wine and poured it into her mouth. Tang Hui still hadn't figured it out. Why don't you tell Fu Shilu the truth? What did you say when you hit her? I called her a vixen and said she was a mistress. Sheng Youxia guessed correctly. Is Liang Nianwei really the harmless little flower that Ji Xingtang and the others described? She didn't expose you because she wanted to continue pretending that she didn't know Fu Shilu had a wife. Knowing the third party is the most disgusting thing. Tang Hui suddenly realized, no wonder she didn't want to watch the surveillance. Sheng Youxia was so drunk that she felt dizzy. She stood up and wanted to leave, but Tang Hui pulled her back. Don't you want to continue playing? I've spent all my money, but I haven't touched enough. No. She lost interest and found it even more boring. Sheng Youxia waved and asked someone to come over to pay the bill. She took out her wallet from her bag, rummaged through it, and pulled out a card from the innermost layer. Fu Shilu had just gone downstairs, and before the car arrived, he received a consumption text message. The string of zeros was very eye-catching. He gave that card to Sheng Youxia when they first got married, but she had never spent it before. This was the first time. Liang Nianwei stood in the cold wind, her body frail and delicate, as if a gust of wind could blow her away. When Sheng Youxia came out, she saw the two of them talking together. She imagined that Fu Shilu might be asking her, "Are you cold?" Liang Nianwei would definitely tell him tenderly, "As long as I can be with you, I won't feel cold no matter what I do." Sheng Youxia drank too much and her steps were unsteady, so Tang Hui, who was beside her, supported her. Passing by Fu Shilu and the others, Tang Hui hugged Sheng Youxia's waist and said, Xia, we should play for a while longer. Just now, several male models looked at you with eyes that seemed to want to eat you up. Fu Shilu stabbed with a cold knife. At this time, a well-dressed man chased out and said, "Wait a moment." He walked quickly to Sheng Youxia and said bluntly, "I'll go back with you." Tang Hui had a question mark on her face. "What do you mean?" The man stared at Sheng Youxia's drunken face and said, "I'm included in the package." "You mean, you'll be with us tonight?" Tang Hui felt excited just thinking about it. "Yes." Tang Hui hurriedly took out the car keys from Sheng Youxia's bag. The man saw that Tang Hui was a little flustered and asked, "Do you need my help?" "Help me hold her up a little." He held Sheng Youxia's arms, and she leaned towards him, not very deeply, but the fragrance lingered and was very exciting. Fu Shilu's car drove over, and Ji Xingtang rubbed his red, frozen hands and said, "Get in the car." Fu Shilu saw Sheng Youxia being carried on the left and right, walking towards the parking lot. Tang Hui is not a serious woman. She is really capable of two women fighting against one man. Fu Shilu threw the car keys to Ji Xingtang, "Take her back to the hospital." "Me?" Ji Xingtang hadn't had enough fun yet. Fu Shilu quickly chased after him, and when Sheng Youxia was about to be stuffed into the car, he stepped forward and pushed the man away. He grabbed Sheng Youxia's waist and brought her into his arms. Without even seeing who the man was, she leaned softly against his chest. "Who are you?" The man looked displeased. "Her husband." "Is this identity enough?" The man smiled, obviously unconvinced. "She doesn't look like she's married." Tang Hui threw the bag onto her shoulder and quickly took the man's arm. "He didn't lie. We can't control what happens next. You should just come with me." Who made Fu Shilu legal? Isn't he that infuriating? Fu Shilu was annoyed by them, so he pushed the two annoying people away with one hand. He opened the passenger door and let Sheng Youxia get in. The car drove out of Royal Hongju. Sheng Youxia felt stuffy in the car and rolled down the window. But it was windy outside and the cold wind rushed in, so Fu Shilu closed the window again. Sheng Youxia was annoyed and opened it again. Fu Shilu was imprisoned again. She turned her head away, furious. "You're looking for death." Fu Shilu met her gaze and spoke word by word, "I want to see who is looking for death tonight." Chapter 19. Are you afraid that I will cheat on you? Ji Xingtang had no choice but to send Liang Nianwei back to the hospital. She sat in the back seat and stretched her legs forward, but they didn't touch the seat. She tried moving forward again and her legs were actually able to straighten. Liang Nianwei touched the leather seat under her body and found it was very soft. This car was bigger and more comfortable than any other car she had ever ridden in her life. I'm sorry to bother you so late. I can actually take a taxi back. She was so considerate that Ji Xingtang felt ashamed. Don't be so polite to me. Liang Nianwei sat obediently by the window, looking like a person who would not fight or compete. Dr. Fu, does he have something urgent? Ji Xingtang couldn't say that he went to take care of his wife, right? It seems like there's a family emergency. You don't have to worry about him. Liang Nianwei hummed. The car was warm, and she untied the scarf around her neck a little. Can I ask you a question? You ask. Liang Nianwei showed a little nervousness, and lowered her voice. Does he have a girlfriend? Ji Xingtang could see that Fu Shilu treated her very differently. Besides, everyone knew that Fu Shilu hated this marriage, so he couldn't say anything careless. No, why do you ask? He just has a wife. Liang Nianwei breathed a sigh of relief and her face relaxed. Xiao Weiwei, Shilu likes you. I can see it all. When your eyes are healed, he will definitely take you home. Just wait a little longer. Liang Nianwei blushed immediately. Don't talk nonsense, he just took extra care of me because I was a patient. In the end, she herself didn't believe it. Ji Xingtang's chest heaved with laughter, and the harder he laughed, the redder the face of the person behind him became. Sheng Youxia drove back to Zizuan. When the man helped her out of the car, she leaned heavily on him. Fu Shilu put his hand on her waist. Her black clothes went up a bit, revealing a large area of her skin that looked smooth and tender against the night sky. The smell of alcohol and fragrance on her body was stronger than that of aphrodisiac. Fu Shilu simply picked her up by the waist and walked quickly into their house. When they returned to their bedroom, Fu Shilu had just put her on the bed when Sheng Youxia fell asleep. No sleep. He held one of her arms and pulled her forward, and with his other hand he pulled the hem of her shirt up. Sheng Youxia's lower abdomen is flat and firm, and her skin is smooth like a peeled egg. The clothes were lifted up to her bra, and Sheng Youxia looked at her proud breasts and said, "You are a hooligan." Fu Shilu was angry. "If I touch you, I'm being a hooligan. Don't you enjoy having so many men around you?" Sheng Youxia felt a chill in her stomach and was forced to raise her arms, watching her shirt being taken off. "I'd also enjoy it if you took off all your clothes and stood in front of me." Fu Shilu's eyes turned cold. "Do you know what you are saying?" Sheng Youxia saw him throw her clothes to the ground like a rag. She grabbed her hair and said angrily, "Why are you throwing my clothes?" He had figured out that some people became unconscious after drinking a few sips of alcohol. Those slaps on Liang Nianwei's face are related to Tang Hui, which means it's related to you as well. Sheng Youxia slowly raised her gaze, which had been lowered, with her eyes half closed. With her bright looks and drunkenness, she looked really seductive and lustful. "Are you looking for me to accuse you? Then why are you taking off my clothes? Is this playing rogue on him? To be fair, I have to take off one of your clothes, too." After Sheng Youxia finished speaking, she grabbed Fu Shilu's collar and started tearing it down. 3 buttons snapped off instantly, and with a popping sound, the man's chest seemed to have opened a deep V-neck, and his sternum extended to his waistline, revealing everything. "Sheng Youxia." She stepped forward and kissed him, forcefully opening his teeth. She was very bold. She hooked the root of his tongue and licked his lips inch by inch, pushing and sending it with the tip of her tongue, trying to resist but also to welcome it. What a good tactic. Fu Shilu's breathing suddenly became heavier, but her hand was still not honest. It touched his neck, covering the hills and valleys, and sweeping across the hard spot. The numbness climbed up from Fu Shilu's tailbone. In order to make it convenient for her, Fu Shilu planned to unbuckle his belt. But Sheng Youxia stopped and said, "I think Director Fu is pure and clear, not tainted by the world. That's it. The abstinence shown in front of outsiders is all fake." Fu Shilu was really pissed off by her tonight. Sheng Youxia was just taking advantage of him. "You're just relying on the few drinks you've had to do anything." Sheng Youxia raised her hand, wiped her mouth, and leaned towards the soft head of the bed. "Why didn't you send Liang Nianwei back to the hospital? How can he be at ease when she is blind?" Sheng Youxia couldn't figure out why he came back with her. "Are you worried about me?" Fu Shilu felt an unspeakable irritation in his heart. I'm overthinking. I see. Sheng Youxia nodded at him twice. Are you afraid that I'll cheat on you? Fu Shilu simply unbuttoned a few other buttons and took off his shirt. The man just now said he wanted to take you back, and you didn't refuse. Sheng Youxia couldn't quite remember the scene, so she didn't say anything. If I were a step late, where would you take him? Is it in a hotel outside, or directly back to their wedding room? Sheng Youxia's head ached. Aren't you annoyed to death by me? Why do you care so much? Fu Shilu's chest felt like it was stuffed with a ball of cotton. All his emotions were blocked and he couldn't vent them. You are the young mistress of the Fu family, you have to have this face. Sheng Youxia leaned against the head of the bed. This was what her stepmother had asked of her since she was a child. She can't be out of line in anything. Where am I shameless? Fu Shilu stood up and was about to take a shower. As soon as he took a step forward, Sheng Youxia grabbed his fingers. The light shone on the man's side, highlighting his muscles. Sheng Youxia stood up and knelt. She was wearing makeup, with thick lipstick and a slightly raised face. She fell headfirst into his arms. Fu Shilu thought she was drunk and was about to push her away. She bit his chest, wrapped it in the wet softness, and sucked it. Fu Shilu's whole body felt as if it was struck by electric current, and he felt a dense itch all over. When Sheng Youxia let go, a hint of silver thread was twitching between her rosy lips. She suddenly smiled at him, her eyes curled up, cunning like a beautiful fox. This is called shameless. Have I ever done this to you before? Fu Shilu looked down and saw a circle of teeth marks. His Adam's apple rolled up and down. She was really bold tonight. Sheng Youxia had two thin straps tied around her shoulders. She got up from the bed and stood on the ground. There are even more shameless ones. Do you want me to show you? Fu Shilu wanted to see how unrestrained she could be. Okay, Mr. Sheng, you really impressed me. He deliberately insulted her. Sheng Youxia took the bag beside her, opened the zipper, and touched the photo inside. Chapter 20 I must be blind to fall in love with you. Sheng Youxia's skin is fair and glowing. She turned around and walked in front of Fu Shilu, slapping the thing in her hand on his chest. She loosened her grip and the photo fell lightly to the ground. Fu Shilu picked it up and looked at it, his expression changing turbulently, and his gaze shot towards Sheng Youxia. She raised her hand to stop him. Don't say I hired someone to follow Liang Nianwei. Look carefully at the angle of the photo. Candid photos don't have this effect. Fu Shilu brought the photo in front of him. They were looking at the camera. He still remembered that the person who took the photo was Liang's mother. Where did you get it? Someone sent it directly to my studio. Sheng Youxia walked to the wall and leaned against it. Fu Shilu flipped through the photo and looked at it. There was nothing written on the back. Do you care? Sheng Youxia's head started to hurt again. She knocked her head with her palm. You can develop your relationship with Liang Nianwei however you want, but you have to at least teach her what it means to be content. You haven't even gotten to the top yet, and you're already thinking about provoking the original wife. What's the point of taking a group photo? If you have the guts, post a photo of yourself in bed. Fu Shilu put the photo on the bedside table and said, she can't do such a thing. It's good to have someone protecting you. Sheng Youxia gently rubbed her temples with her fingertips. Can you please tell Miss Liang a message for me? Fu Shilu had expected that it wouldn't be a good thing. No. If you don't agree, I'll go find her in person. The man's footsteps approached her, his arms on either side of her, and his handsome face pressed in front of her. Why can't you take a joke? Sheng Youxia turned her face away. Then you can try to comfort her and tell her that I am not a threat to her. Fu Shilu still said the same thing. Her eyesight is not good, she can't do this series of things. Sheng Youxia leaned her head against the wall, feeling so dizzy that she could hardly stand. I'll find out who sent this photo. Whatever, Sheng Youxia pushed him away. Anyway, he wouldn't believe that Liang Nianwei did it. Sheng Youxia took a few shaky steps to the bed, turned around and lay down. Two long legs hung on the bed, long hair spread out, the light moved down from her neck. Fu Shilu didn't drink any alcohol, but he was a little drunk. When he came out of the shower, he saw Sheng Youxia still lying there in the same position, but her body was twisted and she looked a little uncomfortable. Fu Shilu stepped forward, bent down, and used his knees to push her legs apart. He touched Sheng Youxia's cheek, which was red and hot. Now you know you feel uncomfortable. When you were drinking, I saw you were quite arrogant. Sheng Youxia grasped his hand. Her facial features were squeezed together, she looked a little aggrieved, and the corners of her eyes turned red instantly. Fu Shilu. Do what? Sheng Youxia was completely drunk. She hugged a hand but couldn't tell who the person was. I'm going blind. She was actually very afraid of not being able to see, afraid that when she woke up, everything in front of her would be dark. Her voice was very nasal, and these words gently chiseled into Fu Shilu's heart. His face was a little serious. What did you say? Fu Shilu put his ear close to Sheng Youxia's mouth. I am blind. Only then will I fall in love with you. The second half of the sentence was added by Fu Shilu. The water drops on his hair that had not yet dried fell onto Sheng Youxia's eyelids. She seemed to hear him ask, does falling in love with me mean you are blind? Sheng Youxia's head hurt so much that it was about to tear. This guy must be sick. She was mourning that her eyes were going blind, but he was talking to her about love and not love. The lights in the bedroom were quickly turned off, and Sheng Youxia was pulled into a hot chest. She was already hot, and now it got even hotter, so she kicked him. Fu Shilu held down her legs, and Sheng Youxia didn't dare to move. Because she felt a stick against her from behind, it was very thick and hot, and she was afraid that if she didn't obey, she would be knocked unconscious by it. Sheng Youxia didn't sleep well that night, and when she woke up in the morning, her body was sticky. She pushed away Fu Shilu's arm that was across her chest and stood up. When Fu Shilu was woken up by the alarm, he didn't see Sheng Youxia. He got up and walked towards the bathroom. As soon as he opened the door, he smelled a choking smell of smoke. What are you doing? He walked in quickly and saw that the photo in Sheng Youxia's hand had been half burned. She threw it into the pool, and Liang Nianwei's face was burned. Fu Shilu did not react too violently. He just turned on the faucet, splashing water everywhere, with half of his face still sticking to the edge of the pool. Such a rage so early in the morning. I'm not angry, but I can't find a frame to put it in. I don't have any place to put it at home, so I might as well burn it. All that's left is to light 2 incense sticks and worship. Sheng Youxia had to meet a client later, so she squeezed some toothpaste and prepared to brush her teeth. Fu Shilu glanced at the photo in the sink, said nothing, and turned and walked out. Sheng Youxia glanced at the man's back. How could he not be angry? Washing hospital. Fu Shilu finished examining Liang Nianwei. The fingerprints on her face had disappeared, but her left cheek still looked more swollen than the right. Does your eye still hurt? Liang Nianwei shook her head lightly. It doesn't hurt anymore. Liang's mother sat on the side, wanting to say something but stopping herself, but Liang Nianwei had told her not to ask too many questions, so she had to hold it in. Mom, I want to eat xilong babo. Hearing this, Liang's mother stood up quickly and said, okay, I'll go buy it. Fu Shilu glanced at the phone on the bedside table. Did you save our photo? It's saved, in the photo album. Liang Nianwei's expression did not show the slightest sign of abnormality. Let me see. She probably didn't expect Fu Shilu to have such a request, but after being stunned for only 2 or 3 seconds, Liang Nianwei fumbled for her cell phone. Her finger touched the unlock button, and Fu Shilu saw a family photo pop up on the screen. Besides her and Liang's mother, there was also a man. Is this your brother? Yes. Liang Nianwei didn't want to mention this person, so she gave the phone to Fu Shilu. He opened the album. There weren't many photos in it, and the first one was their group photo. There aren't many people in her WeChat contact list. She is blind, so she didn't reply to many messages, most of which were asking about her eyes and whether she could have surgery. Fu Shilu returned the phone to her and asked, why didn't you pursue the matter of you being beaten last night? Liang Nianwei was somewhat helpless. There is no surveillance in the bathroom. Even if someone was filmed going in from outside, it doesn't mean that she was the one who did it. She clasped her hands together and lowered her head. I didn't see who it was with my own eyes, so I can't prove it. Forget it. She wanted to let the matter go, so Fu Shilu naturally didn't want to pursue it any further. As he left the ward and passed the nurse's station, he heard several people bragging. I had to go out at noon, and I met a very nice person. I found my phone. Fu Shilu went over and put the medical records on the table. What's wrong with your phone? I lost it yesterday, and the police station just called me and said someone picked it up and sent it over. Fu Shilu tapped the pen in his hand twice on the stage. The nurse also took a photo of him and Liang Nianwei at that time. Chapter 21. This beauty looks familiar. Fu Shilu rarely made a joke. If there are any secrets in the phone, it may not be kept secret. The nurse responded beautifully, Director Fu, are you talking about the photo of you and Liang Nianwei? I'll send it to Mrs. Fu tonight. Fu Shilu glanced at the door of the ward, thoughtfully. Did Liang Nianwei go out yesterday? Well, she went out with her mother at night. What about during the day? The nurses all knew that Liang Nianwei came from a poor family and that the little girl was quite pitiful, so they took extra care of her. No, she rarely even leaves the ward. Good. During lunch break, Fu Shilu sent a WeChat message to Sheng Youxia. I've checked it out. The photo incident has nothing to do with Liang Nianwei. Sheng Youxia glanced at the message and wondered what nonsense he was talking about. She resisted the urge to greet him, edited a message and sent it over. Okay, then I'll trouble Director Fu to investigate again and find out who is so wicked as to want to destroy our relationship. Tell me if you find out, and I'll go to her ancestral grave and light firecrackers. Afterwards, Fu Shilu told her about the nurse losing her cell phone, but she didn't believe a word of it. How could such a coincidence happen in the world? Fortunately, Sheng Youxia negotiated a big deal today and her mood improved. There was no need for her to torture herself for a photo. It was Sunday and Fu Shilu was off work, but he went out early. When Sheng Youxia went downstairs, she didn't see him. The servant brought the prepared breakfast to her and said, Madam, aren't you going with Mr. Fu? Where are you going? He seemed to be celebrating someone's birthday. I thought you were also. For this kind of event, the couple must be present together. Sheng Youxia was used to it. After all, Fu Shilu had never been willing to admit that she was his wife. I have to go out for something today, so I won't be back for lunch. Yes. Sheng Youxia walked outside and found that it was raining heavily. Her driving skills were average, so she didn't like driving on rainy days. Her apprentice called her just in time, so Sheng Youxia simply asked her to pick her up. In the afternoon, it turned cloudy and rainy again. After dinner, Fu Shilu and others went to the Zhao family's private residence to relax. Mr. Zhao is from Suzhou. He bought a piece of land a few years ago and built such a house according to garden standards. Fu Shilu sat in the pavilion, grabbing a handful of fish food and feeding it to the koi. Zhao Jingping told him to take it easy, these are my grandfather's treasures. If they die of starvation, I'll be finished. I'll buy more when I'm full. Ancestor, can we play cards instead of fish? Raindrops fell along the eaves of the octagonal pavilion, hitting the emerald green lotus leaves like a string of pearls. Fu Shilu raised his eyes and saw a woman walking on the opposite eaves. He just saw her back. The cheongsam has a wavy texture and an exquisite backless design. Their high-slit skirt reveals a pair of white and slender legs as the woman sways. Ji Xingtang also saw it, and his eyes suddenly lit up. Where did this beautiful lady come from? Zhao Jingping, you have a beautiful lady hidden in your golden house. Fuck, she has such a hot body, beautiful lady, look back. Fu Shilu just felt that the figure seemed somewhat familiar, but he couldn't remember who it was. The woman had her long hair tied up with a small leaf red sandalwood hairpin. She had a slim and graceful figure. Don't shout, this is the perfumer my grandfather hired. This was the first time Ji Xingtang heard these words, what is a perfumer? You don't understand. You only know how to smoke, drink and pick up women. Fu Shilu loosened his grip and the entire bag of fish food fell into the pond. Zhao Jingping's face turned pale and he howled, I'm going to be beaten to death. He walked forward and pulled Fu Shilu up, calling him Master Fu all the way, let's go play cards. The table is set up in the main hall. Let's go right away. A group of people crowded into the main hall, the door was open wide, the drizzle came in with the wind, and the servants prepared tea. There was a screen at the side of the hall, so no one noticed that there was someone sitting behind it. Ji Xingtang sat down at the table and picked up a deck of cards. Zhao Jingping, your yard smells really good. It smells good, right? Zhao Jingping also liked the smell. My grandfather is coming to stay here tonight, so I sent an incense burner to burn incense first. Do you know how much money he will burn in a day? Ji Xingtang thought, it's probably just the price of a bottle of perfume, how much? Zhao Jingping pointed a few fingers and said, 30,000. Fuck. 30,000 a day. Yes. Ji Xingtang looked at Fu Shilu, isn't it that your wife is also a spice maker? Fu Shilu never asked about Sheng Youxia's affairs, and he didn't know her very well. That should be it. At most, she relied on the Sheng family and opened a small studio, where she would take on some small orders to kill time. Let's not talk about this unlucky person, let's talk about little Wei Wei. Jishingtang picked up the teapot and poured a cup of tea for Fushilu. Why didn't you bring her over to play with? It was raining outside. Fushilu sat on a mahogany chair. Her eyesight is not good. She should stay in the hospital. No, you have to let her come out and see more of the servants. Fushilu took a cigarette out of the box and ran his fingers across the lighter with a tinkling sound. Behind the screen, there was a faint sound of knocking on the table. Fushilu looked over and saw a woman coming out. Master is going to light incense. Please don't smoke. Fushilu held the cigarette between his teeth, and didn't have time to get closer to the light. I smoke my cigarettes and she lights her incense, so we shouldn't interfere with each other. The woman looked at these rich kids, neither humble nor arrogant. It's a bit strange. Fushilu stood up from his chair, took out the cigarette from his mouth, and walked towards the screen with his long legs. He could vaguely see his outline, and he seemed to be wearing a tight cheongsam, which showed his curvaceous figure. Fushilu was about to go over to find out what was going on, but unexpectedly he was stopped by someone. Mr. Fu, the incense master doesn't want to be disturbed, so please bear with me. The person who spoke was the butler under Mr. Zhao. Zhao Jinping also respected him and winked at Fushilu. After all, this was someone else's private residence, so Fushilu still gave him this face. The incense master sat behind the screen and began to light incense. A small clump of hair fell off, but she had no time to care. Jishingtang started dealing cards and was discussing what to play with the person next to him. How about a bigger bet? Fushilu sat back in his original seat, but his eyes unconsciously glanced at the screen. There is an operation tomorrow, which is very difficult and the chance of success is slim. But if this is not done, the 5-year-old child will be permanently blind. Fushilu couldn't calm down. At this time, the fragrance rises up and penetrates deeply into their heart. His impetuous feelings suddenly faded. Fushilu stared at the figure closely. Even though it was just an outline, he still felt familiar with it. Where have you seen me? Chapter 22. You smell so good. The butler retreated behind the screen and watched the woman burning incense with her delicate hands. Outside the screen, a group of young masters were playing cards. He didn't think there was anything wrong with it before, but now he thought they were so tacky. After finishing here, their housekeeper took the perfumer to the guest room. Until she left, Fushilu and the others didn't get a clear look at her appearance. In the lounge, Sheng Youxia was unbuttoning her cheongsam, with the clothes she wore hanging next to her. There are still a few rooms and side halls that have not been lit yet. I'll leave them all to you. Okay. The young apprentice agreed. The incense that Zhao Jinping mentioned cost 30,000 yuan a day was bought from Sheng Youxia, and she made money from this. As for coming here to burn incense today, it was all because of Mr. Zhao. Sheng Youxia changed her clothes and put the cheongsam into a teak suitcase. The housekeeper wanted to send a car to take her there, but Sheng Youxia declined. She was wearing a knee-length coat, and even though the rain wasn't heavy, the hems were still damp. Fushilu drove over and saw a figure holding an umbrella walking along the roadside. He backed the car up to the person's side. The car window rolled down, and the man's voice was as cold as the rain. Get in the car. Sheng Youxia checked the app on her phone and saw that the car she had called 10 minutes ago had not been accepted yet. She quickly opened the car door, got in, and put the umbrella at her feet. Fushilu looked puzzled, his eyes fell on the teak box in her arms. Why are you here? She took a tissue and tucked the water droplets on her hair. A client is about to meet nearby. Fushilu didn't start the car, and even unbuckled his seatbelt, leaning towards Sheng Youxia. She had just lit several kinds of incense, and there was a lingering fragrance on her body. The man grabbed her arm and pulled her over. What? It smells so good. His hoarse voice came out from his rolling throat. Fushilu stared at her earlobe, which was white and translucent. The red spread behind her ear, forming a beautiful rouge color. I make perfume, how can I not smell good? Sheng Youxia waved her hands in front of her face and said, I just tried several kinds for the client, and the smell is still on me. The man's hot breath hit her neck. Sheng Youxia's face was burning, and a strand of hair scratched his earlobe, making it itchy. You're wet. Her first reaction when she heard these words was that her heart almost burst out of her chest. But then Fushilu added, my clothes are wet. He spoke in a serious tone, as if he had no idea that these 3 words had any other meaning. Sheng Youxia quickly changed the subject. Are you going somewhere else? Or just go home directly? And you? Go home. This kind of weather is suitable for staying at home. The car drove out and waited for the traffic light. Fu Shilu asked her thoughtfully, have you heard of the profession of perfumer? Well, Sheng Youxia stroked the wooden box with his fingers, I heard a little bit about it. Your family is in the spice business, and your father must have given you a lot of orders. But the wooden hairpin on Sheng Youxia's head had been taken off long ago, and her hair was left loose. But what? You need to learn more. You know nothing about incense. How far can your studio go? Sheng Youxia gently raised her lips and turned to look at the man beside her. Director Fu is right. You are the top ophthalmologist at such a young age, but I am just a useless vase. Fu Shilu didn't mean to make fun of her, being a vase isn't completely useless. At least I'll take you out and make you look good. Sheng Youxia really wants to thank him. When the car was halfway there, Ji Xingtang called. Sheng Youxia could hear the 2 people's conversation clearly. Shilu, I just had a few words with the Zhao family's housekeeper. Didn't you say that Xiao Weiwei always has trouble sleeping at night? Why don't you buy her some incense? It seems to be called Goose Pear Tent Fragrance. Sheng Youxia leaned back in her chair and looked out the window. The housekeeper said if we want to buy something, we have to buy the best. He recommended the WeChat of the person who supplies incense to Mr. Zhao. It is said that the incense is hard to come by and very expensive. But you won't feel bad about spending the money on Xiao Weiwei. Sheng Youxia wondered if Liang Nianwei was the illegitimate daughter of the Ji family. Otherwise, how could Ji Xingtang care so much about it? That's fine, you can send me WeChat. Fu Shilu didn't believe it before, but after experiencing it himself today, he thought he could buy it and give it a try. The phone call was hung up. Sheng Youxia turned around and said, I have this fragrance in my store. Can I give you 2 boxes? Fu Shilu looked ahead and said with disdain, didn't you listen to what Ji Xingtang said? If you want to use it, you have to use the best. What she sells are probably things that come off the assembly line. Sheng Youxia was not angry. It seemed that he really cared about Liang Nianwei. That fragrance is suitable for calming the mind and promoting sleep. It also has a name, called Sleeping Fragrance. She didn't know whether her words had touched the sore spot in Fu Shilu's heart, but anyway, he never treated her well again. After returning to Zizuan, Sheng Youxia took a shower and changed into home clothes. She picked up her phone and saw someone on her work WeChat applying to be added as a friend. She clicked on it and saw that it was her husband. There was no reason for Sheng Youxia to turn away a guest, so she approved the request. Fu Shilu went straight for the incense, and Sheng Youxia didn't hesitate, a box of 30 sticks, 100,000. According to the rules, she was supposed to give a brief introduction to Xiang. But Fu Shilu didn't hesitate, give me a bank account number. Sheng Youxia sent her apprentice's card number, and after a while, she received a message that 100,000 renminbi had arrived in her account. Okay, he made 98,000 in one transaction. Just thinking about him buying perfume for other women, Sheng Youxia felt uncomfortable. When Fu Shilu entered the room, he did not see Sheng Youxia. He walked to the window and saw her sitting on the balcony. There was still drizzling in the sky. Fu Shilu came outside and leaned against the railing. He turned his back to Sheng Youxia and took out his cell phone to send messages. She didn't expect that the message appeared on her phone the next moment. I bought some incense, can anyone help me light it? Sheng Youxia was not as magnanimous as to light incense for the mistress. She held her phone and replied to him. I'm sorry, sir. You are a casual customer and can only order by yourself. If you buy a year's worth of incense at once, I can arrange for a perfumer to come to your door for service. Fu Shilu didn't expect that a perfume seller would have such a bad attitude. He turned and walked over, and Sheng Youxia quickly put his phone aside. The men all looked at her with disdain, she's selling something and she's acting superior. Don't learn from this kind of person. Sheng Youxia pretended not to understand, who are you talking about? Fu Shilu sat next to her and showed her Sheng Youxia's WeChat ID. Do you know this person? She covered her mouth with her hands, her expression a little exaggerated. You can actually buy ready-made incense from her. Just be happy, it's definitely worth the money. Chapter 23, Your husband has been snatched away, what are you so proud of? $100,000 for 30 incense sticks, is it worth it? Is she great? Sheng Youxia nodded hurriedly, wishing that Fu Shilu would get carried away and order the incense for the whole year. The genius of our incense-making business is truly hard to come by. No wonder people are so arrogant. Fu Shilu's eyes wandered to her face again. Sheng Youxia's words were full of sarcasm. Even if you gave Liang Nianwei my perfume, she wouldn't be able to smell the difference. You must be looking down on me. She saw the man's disgusted look, thinking that he was afraid that her thing would ruin that pure little flower. The next day, the person who delivered the incense went directly to the hospital according to the address. Before Fu Shilu entered the operating room, he went to Liang Nianwei's ward and lit a stick of incense. He sat for a while and his mood calmed down. Dr. Fu, I heard you're going to have a major surgery soon. Are you nervous? Fu Shilu likes quietness before the operation, and it is best if he does not say a word. But he still replied, not nervous. Just think about it. After the operation, the child will be able to see the colorful world. It's all thanks to you. Liang Nianwei also hopes that her eyes can see soon. Okay, Fu Shilu stood up and went to prepare for the operation. Put this incense here. Light one before going to bed every night. It will help you sleep well. Liang Nianwei took a light sniff. The smell was very pleasant, but it seemed like she had smelled it somewhere before. Thank you, Dr. Fu. Fu Shilu was about to walk out when the door of the ward was pushed open. Liang's mother came in and immediately smelled the odor in the room. It smells so good. Liang Nianwei sat on the bed, the corners of her mouth raised. Mom, maybe I can sleep well tonight. Liang's mother walked towards her bed and said, it smells similar to the fragrance in the toilet. Fu Shilu paused slightly, and the smile on Liang Nianwei's lips suddenly froze. After the man left, her face fell. Mom, can you be more careful with your words next time? What's wrong with me? Liang's mother was confused. Why does the incense he sent smell like the toilet? When Liang's mother saw the displeasure on her face, she realized that she had said the wrong thing. But they didn't understand this. It was already evening when Fu Shilu came out of the operation. The anxious parents waiting outside almost fell to their knees when they saw him. Dr. Fu, how is it? God bless me, it must be a good result, right? Fu Shilu's cold and handsome face rarely showed a smile. The operation was very successful, don't worry. He walked through the hospital corridors, the light casting a hazy shadow over his shoulder. For Fu Shilu, solving a difficult medical problem gave him a great sense of accomplishment, and he really wanted to find someone to share his experience with. Director Fu, congratulations. Along the way, the nurses who received the news congratulated him. Fu Shilu wanted to find Liang Nianwei, but as soon as he walked into the elevator, his finger pressing the stair key paused. He ended up not looking for her but going to the parking lot. Tang Hui had been waiting in the rest area for a long time. It was really difficult to make an appointment with Sheng Youxia for dinner. She is receiving a male guest. The man had no idea about fragrance and his eyes were wandering around Sheng Youxia. Is your incense made of gold? It's so expensive. You get what you pay for, sir. It's expensive for a reason. Sheng Youxia met the man's gaze. There seemed to be provocation in his eyes, which made people feel very uncomfortable. I'll make you a cup of tea, you can take your time. Sheng Youxia walked to the tea area. Tang Hui saw him and hurriedly followed him. It's obvious that the man has no money. Look at his clothes. It's been a long time since he changed his clothes. He's not here to buy incense. Tang Hui stared at the man's every move. What is he going to do? He is Liang Nianwei's brother. What? Tang Hui was shocked, her face full of alertness. What is he going to do? He's not going to do anything bad to you, is he? I don't think he would dare. Sheng Youxia had already hired someone to clean out Liang Nianwei's family assets. He has been here for almost an hour. I guess he also knows about Liang Nianwei and Fu Shilu. Tang Hui felt that this man was a dangerous person, so it would be better to stay away from him. Kick him out. He will definitely come to trouble me, but not now. Maybe he was still hesitating, so Sheng Youxia poured a glass of boiled water without even adding tea leaves. I have to add fuel to his fire. If he does something out of line, Liang Nianwei can't just sit there and do nothing. If she doesn't have Fu Shilu as her backer, she can forget about competing with me about the cornea. Sheng Youxia brought a glass of water over and placed it next to the man. He looked inside and saw clear water. It's such a big place, but there's not even any tea. Sheng Youxia began to collect the documents on the table. Sir, you can go out and take the subway and go to the wholesale market. There are incense sticks there for 10 yuan a bunch, which are also good. The man suddenly stood up as if he was enraged. What do you mean? I just think you don't need to buy something so expensive. You look down on me. The man pointed his right hand at her. Don't regret it. Sheng Youxia poured the glass of water into the trash can and said, slow down. The corner of the man's lips curled up in a strange arc. Her husband was taken away by her sister. What was she so proud of? The man turned and went downstairs. After taking a few steps, he saw someone coming up. He looked at him carefully, put his hat on his head, pressed down the brim, and walked past the man. When Fu Shilu came upstairs, he heard Tang Hui's voice. What on earth does he want to do? Sheng Youxia saw the figure standing behind Tang Hui, and she quickly stopped talking. Shilu, why are you here? When Tang Hui turned her head, she was as if she had seen a ghost. Since they got married, Fu Shilu has never been to Sheng Youxia's studio. He didn't expect Tang Hui to be there too. I just happened to be passing by. On their way back to Zizuan from Huaxing Hospital, he would never pass by her place. He walked over a few steps without even glancing at Tang Hui. He asked Sheng Youxia, have you had dinner? Sheng Youxia looked at Tang Hui, then at him. No. It just so happens that I don't have one either. What do you mean? Are you trying to steal her? Tang Hui immediately interrupted. I made an appointment with her yesterday and have been waiting for her all afternoon. Fu Shilu stared at her red hair and said, you can make an appointment another day. No, we agreed to go eat hot pot, the spiciest kind. Director Fu won't like it. He usually eats a light diet, so why should he join in the fun? But Fu Shilu didn't give in to her. Hot pot, I can have it too. Tang Hui sneered, thinking that just now, his future brother-in-law had come to provoke him. She wanted to teach the culprit a lesson. Well, Director Fu, please come with us. It's your treat. It seemed that Fu Shilu couldn't drive her away, so he had to agree. When they set off, he asked Sheng Youxia to get in his car. Chapter 24, Men, How Can You Say No? Tang Hui sent the location of the hot pot restaurant to Sheng Youxia's mobile phone. Why don't you try something else? It's too spicy. You can't stand it. Fu Shilu seemed to be in a good mood today. Go home after dinner. If she wants to go somewhere else, remember to refuse her. Sheng Youxia saw that it was still early, so she fastened her seat belt. Anything else later? I have something to talk to you about. Mysteriously, Sheng Youxia asked him to drive and follow Tang Hui. Speak now. Fu Shilu is quite good at keeping people in suspense. Fill your stomach first. Tang Hui was angry but couldn't vent it. She didn't dare to confront Fu Shilu head on. When she arrived at the hot pot restaurant, she picked up the menu and started ordering. When the pot came up, it was a Shuang Yuan pot. The clear soup was for Sheng Youxia. Xia is researching new fragrances recently and can't eat spicy food. But I know Director Fu can do it. As a man, you should be fearless, right? Fu Shilu took the chopsticks and was wiping them over and over again. It doesn't matter. Tang Hui only dared to stab him in the back. I told you, a man who can't eat spicy food as well as me is not a real man, he's just a wimp. Fu Shilu suddenly stopped wiping and stared at Sheng Youxia beside him with a cold look. She felt the man's gaze and slowly turned her face away. Fu Shilu's expression was wrong. Why did he look like he wanted to eat someone? The hot pot was brought to the table and the food was served quickly. Tang Hui took the serving chopsticks and kept frying the beef. In the hot pot, peppercorns and plenty of red chili peppers are swirling around, as if a bowl of the brightest red paint had been poured into it. Tang Hui stuffed a piece of beef into her mouth with chopsticks, and it was indeed very spicy. Director Fu, please eat. You're welcome. Sheng Youxia saw Fu Shilu put his chopsticks in, and when he took it out, the tips of the chopsticks were red. Can you do it? Fu Shilu paused again. Tang Hui kicked Sheng Youxia under the table. How can a man say no? The soup base is spicy, but it's mainly numbing. Fu Shilu's lips became numb after just a few bites. Sheng Youxia was eating the hot pot meat in the clear soup and was not aware of other people's pain at all. Xia, after eating hot pot, let's go sing or sit in a bar for a while. Before Sheng Youxia could open her mouth, a hand held down her legs. Next time, I have to go back earlier today. If she didn't refuse, Fu Shilu would probably have nothing good to say. Hearing this, Tang Hui pointed at the floating bin curd soaked with chili oil and said, "Director Fu, eat it." After dinner, Tang Hui drove away. She had to rush to the pharmacy to get some gastrointestinal medicine. Back at Zizuan, Sheng Youxia and Fu Shilu went upstairs one after another. She walked into the room. The lights were not on yet, and Sheng Youxia's wrist was held by a large, warm hand. Then, Fu Shilu's arm pushed her shoulders and pressed her against the hard wall. "What are you doing?" Her hand was held and forcibly brought under Fu Shilu's body. She just said softly, "What does that mean?" Tang Hui and Sheng Youxia are best friends, so who knows what she has told Tang Hui. "You are just being overly suspicious. I just want you to stop being a coward." There was a very thin layer of cloth on Sheng Youxia's palm, and a certain part of his body had a deep outline. "So, tell me, am I soft?" Sheng Youxia's shoulders trembled, the body behind him felt hot, and their clothes were like they were on fire. "Fu Shilu, calm down, you didn't drink tonight." He moved closer to her face, staring at her earlobe. It was small and soft, and he took it into his mouth. He didn't know what it tasted like. Fu Shilu opened his mouth and bit it, with the intention of settling the score later. "Don't you feel sorry for me? When she asked me to eat so much spicy food, you didn't say a word." Sheng Youxia wanted to say, "What's the point of feeling sorry for her? I saw that you didn't change your expression, so I thought you could eat spicy food." Fu Shilu loosened his grip and stepped back, and Sheng Youxia turned around and was about to leave. "I should let you have a taste." As he said this, he rubbed Sheng Youxia's lips with his thumb and then kissed her. The tip of his tongue was still numb and spicy, and he clung to Sheng Youxia and kissed her passionately, not letting go of every inch. She had time to catch her breath, but her tongue was numb. Sheng Youxia covered her mouth with her hand. "Is that enough?" With redness at the corners of his eyes as if he had been bullied, Fu Shilu leaned down, almost leaning against Sheng Youxia's forehead. "I performed a successful operation today." He was extremely eager to share right now. "Oh," Sheng Youxia said, her mouth was numb and she couldn't speak clearly, "as long as you are in charge, there will be no unsuccessful operation." That's not necessarily true. They went to many hospitals and they all said it couldn't be cured. Is this to make her praise you? Sheng Youxia was at a loss for words. "Then it has to be you, Dr. Fu." There was excitement in the man's eyes. There was something he had always wanted to do but had suppressed it until now. "I want to vent." Sheng Youxia could understand it. After all, it was a very fulfilling thing. "Then you can ask Ji Xingtang and the others out for a drink now." Fu Shilu's arms were wrapped around her waist, and his voice hit Sheng Youxia above her head. "I have to vent on you." "What?" She reacted and started pushing him hard. She was quickly pressed down on the bed by Fu Shilu, and Sheng Youxia saw him pull his shirt out of his waistband. "I'm thirsty. I'm thirsty. Drink after you finish." "No, I'll die of thirst." Fu Shilu suddenly smiled, turned over and sat on the edge of the bed, glancing at Sheng Youxia. "Then hurry up." She hurriedly got up from the bed. Luckily the medicine Tang Hui gave her was still there. Sheng Youxia went to pour water and found an opportunity to secretly put the medicine in. She turned around to look at Fu Shilu and found that the man was also looking at her with sharp eyes, as if he could see through her. Sheng Youxia returned to the bed with a glass of water. "You should drink some too. Your mouth must be dry after eating hot pot." Fu Shilu looked at her with a half smile. "No, I'm not thirsty." He dug his fingers into her sweater and rubbed her waist with his fingertips. "Do you have the habit of asking me to drink water before going to bed?" Sheng Youxia felt guilty. "I didn't." Fu Shilu took the cup and placed it on the bedside table. "That's right. I don't have this habit either." He hooked his fingers into her bra and unhooked it with one hand, as skillfully as a gangster. Sheng Youxia still wanted to refuse. "Today is not my ovulation period." Fu Shilu's palm moved from back to front, and the sudden full feeling made his eyes deep. Sheng Youxia understood what the word vent meant. Fu Shilu was like taking medicine tonight. Her body was delicate and soft, and she was bent into various positions in his hands. Several times, if he hadn't held her waist tightly, she would have been knocked off the ground. She suspected that Fu Shilu wanted to smash her to pieces. Sheng Youxia's legs slipped and she fell on the bed, with the man pressing down on her back. The doctor said there's nothing wrong with my body. Do you believe it now? Chapter 25. You're good at having fun. The spring tide is surging. Sheng Youxia was also happy. The next morning, she woke up first, with soreness and pain at the base of her legs, all kinds of sensations. The man next to him was still sleeping, his face turned to the side, his jawline as sculpted, with sharp edges and corners. She sat up and saw that her chest was covered with strawberry marks. Sheng Youxia stared at his neck, which was long and slender and looked good to suck. She leaned over his chest, took hold of the thin flesh on his neck, wrapped it with the tip of her tongue, and sucked it repeatedly. Fu Shilu hissed and woke up. Itchy and painful, he raised his hand and pressed Sheng Youxia's head. She sucked a big strawberry for him, which was located high up and could not be covered by her collar. When Sheng Youxia got up, his legs were weak and he fell to the ground. Fu Shilu sneered, "What a waste." He lifted the thin blanket covering his lower body, walked over and squatted in front of Sheng Youxia. "Do you want me to help you?" The two of them met each other naked, each with their own proud features, and Sheng Youxia did not even cover herself. "You might as well just carry me to take a shower. My legs are weak." She just said that, but she didn't expect Fu Shilu to actually lean over, put one arm through her legs, and stand up straight without any support. "After working hard for most of the night, I still have so much energy." The bathtub was filling with water and Sheng Youxia was sitting on the edge. She hesitated whether to ask him a question. Since he cares so much about Liang Nianwei, he should treat Sheng Youxia like an abandoned woman and leave her at home without paying any attention to her. This is the right thing to do. Fu. The bathroom door was not closed and a cell phone rang. Fu Shilu went to answer the phone first. Sheng Youxia didn't hear the specific content of the call, and she didn't wait for him to come in. Fu Shilu hurriedly found a set of clothes to put on, and when he left, he just left a few words at the door. "There's an emergency at the hospital. I'm leaving now." He left anxiously, and Sheng Youxia guessed that it was probably about Liang Nianwei again. At the door of the hospital ward, two nurses were looking around. When they saw Fu Shilu, they quickly waved at him. "Director Fu, you are finally here." In the single room, Liang's mother was squatting on the ground, picking up scattered apples and tableware. Liang Nianwei curled up at the head of the bed. When she heard footsteps coming, she was so scared that she hugged her legs tightly. "It's me." She heard a familiar male voice and quickly reached out her hand. "Shilu." The door had been closed when Fu Shilu came in. He walked over and Liang Nianwei threw herself into his arms. Liang's mother was furious, but there was nothing she could do. "I'm sorry, Director Fu, it's my son who's here. He knows I have no money at all, but he still forces me." Liang Nianwei trembled. "He also wants to beat Nianwei. What sin have I committed to give birth to such a rebellious son?" Fu Shilu's face was indifferent. "Why didn't you call the police?" "No, besides, the police don't get involved in family affairs. Liang Nianwei is young, poor and blind, and she will be bullied to death wherever she goes. Living in such a family, it is easy to become depressed, so Fu Shilu decided to take her out of the hospital for walks more often. Ever since Mr. Zhao started using Sheng Youxia's incense, he has been very satisfied with it. He praises it to everyone he meets, saying that the 30,000 yuan a day is totally worth it and it has brought him a lot of happiness. Most rich people are pretentious, and after Mr. Zhao's introduction, Sheng Youxia actually got several big businesses. But she didn't expect that when she went to burn incense in the courtyard, she would actually run into Liang Nianwei. Liang Nianwei was washing her hands in the bathroom next to the corridor. Sheng Youxia walked over and turned off her faucet. "Who?" She stood up straight like a frightened bird. "Me," Sheng Youxia said tentatively. Liang Nianwei looked a little unnatural. "Excuse me, do you know me?" Sheng Youxia leaned against the sink and wondered, if she told him clearly that she was Fu Shilu's wife, what would this little white flower do? He will most likely go to Fu Shilu, feeling aggrieved and crying. She is in favor now, so Sheng Youxia didn't go and cause trouble for herself, so as not to annoy Fu Shilu. She would not get any information about the cornea. "Miss, we have met before at Royal Rainbow. Didn't Dr. Fu say that my friend beat you?" Liang Nianwei subconsciously stepped back. "It was a misunderstanding, I have already made it clear to him." "That's right, I'm not the kind of person who would just do it casually." Sheng Youxia saw that her face was pale and she had no makeup on. "I just saw Dr. Fu." "Yes, he came with me." Sheng Youxia saw her move her feet, as if she was about to leave. Dr. Fu, there is a big strawberry on your neck. Did you grow it? What? You're quite good at it. You suck really hard. Liang Nianwei's thin figure made her look even more charming. At this moment, a voice came straight to Sheng Youxia. You are here, I can't find you anywhere. He is the person who is responsible for guarding this house. You can just call me by my name. You don't have to be so polite with me. Sheng Youxia put on a smile. That won't do. You are the perfumer invited by our wife, a distinguished guest. The man took Sheng Youxia away without even looking at the blind Liang Nianwei. She returned to Fushilu, where several men were talking. Do you remember the perfumer I met at Zhao Xingping's house last time? She was so hot and had a great figure. Ji Xingtan can't forget her. Fushilu took an orange and put it in Liang Nianwei's hand. You didn't see her face. She might die in the light. I don't believe it. I bet it's definitely a pretty face. Maybe even prettier than Sheng Youxia. Fushilu shot a cold light over, and Ji Xingtan quickly slapped his mouth. Xia Rui was also very curious. Let's ask someone to come over and take a look, then we'll know, right? Liang Nianwei clenched the orange in her hand. She could tell that Fushilu seemed to be interested as well. I made a bet with Ji Xingtan. If it doesn't look good, what are you going to lose to me? Liang Nianwei accidentally pinched the peel of the orange. Fushilu actually didn't he know that the famous perfumer was Sheng Youxia? Xia Rui was getting excited and was about to stand up. I'll go and call. Liang Nianwei grabbed Fushilu's arm in a hurry. No. The man's smile faded slightly and he looked at her. What's wrong? Ji Xingtan smiled and said, Is Xia Weiwei jealous? We are just curious and want to take a look. Liang Nianwei clenched Fushilu's shirt with her fingertips. I think this is not good, it's a bit disrespectful. She was just invited to work, but you are curious about her appearance. If it were me, I would definitely not want to do that. Ji Xingtan was stunned, it seemed to make sense. Oh, little Weiwei, why are you so kind? I'm almost falling in love with you. Fushilu's eyes showed approval. This was what touched him about Liang Nianwei. Kind, in short, kinder than Sheng Youxia. Chapter 26. Do you want to divorce me? Sheng Youxia changed out of her cheongsam in the lounge. Apprentice and Qing came in angrily. That blind man is really annoying. Sheng Youxia folded the cheongsam and put it in the teak box. How did she offend you? Master, I just saw the same group of people from last time in the front hall. And Qing and Fushilu didn't know each other. She was lighting incense just now and heard their conversation clearly. Those rich people are curious about you and want to meet you. Sheng Youxia pulled out her hairpin and ran her fingers through her silky long hair. And then the blind man stopped her, saying something about disrespecting you. Only stupid men would believe that. She was just jealous. Liang Nianwei seems to have nothing else except a tragic life experience. All she can do is hold on to Fushilu tightly. I didn't want to see them anyway. And Qing knew her temper. We are here just to make money. Maybe we can get a business deal after chatting for a while, and it would be best if we can make a lot of money. Sheng Youxia couldn't help laughing. Little money grubber. This yard was previously privately owned, but after being bought it was converted into a tea house, and now its business is booming. And Qing followed Sheng Youxia out. The wooden floor remained as it was, and it creaked when they stepped on it. She passed by a room and saw an open window with a guzheng placed next to it. Master, can you play the guzheng? I only know a little bit. Sheng Youxia stared at the guzheng without moving. After she married into the Fu family, she never touched it again. Fushilu told her clearly that there should be no noisy sounds in the house and he didn't like it. It seems that she has given up a lot for this man. Master, please give it a try. I just came to this room to light incense, and the housekeeper said that this is prepared for guests, and anyone can play it. Really? Sheng Youxia felt a little itchy. Downstairs, a group of people were playing cards, but Fushilu did not join in. He took some cakes and gave them to Liang Nianwei, asking her to eat them. These are the sweet-scented osmanthus cakes we made here. Are they delicious? Liang Nianwei took a small bite and said, It's delicious. She was blind, but she ate whatever he gave her and was as obedient as a little white rabbit. The sound of the piano flows down from the pavilion, swaying my mind. Sheng Youxia played a song called Half Pot of Silk. No one playing cards took it seriously, except Fu Shilu, who raised his head. He followed the sound of the piano and saw half of the face of the person playing the piano sitting by the window. He narrowed his eyes slightly, suspecting that he had seen it wrong. The piano music continued, but he could not sit still. "I'm going to the bathroom and will be back soon." When Fu Shilu stood up, he gently placed his hand on Liang Nianwei's shoulder. "Don't run around." He walked out quickly, with his long legs stretched straight. He went to the second floor and soon arrived in front of the room. Fu Shilu leaned against the door frame and did not go in to disturb them. After the song ended, and Ching clapped his hands, "This is not just the surface, there are so many more surprises that I don't know about." Fu Shilu should have said this. How come he didn't know that Sheng Youxia could play the guzheng so skillfully? When listening to the zither, you are listening to your mood. All the sorrows and worries are on your mind. Sheng Youxia was about to stand up when she looked down and saw Liang Nianwei. It's really ironic that her husband takes a rare day off, but he spends time with another woman. And Ching also saw the person below. "Look, that's the blind man." Sheng Youxia believes that she is no worse than Liang Nianwei, but in Fu Shilu's heart, she means nothing. What do you think her reaction would be if I went to her with the zither and played it? You mean the blind man? And Ching didn't know the relationship between the two yet. Will she understand? She will definitely feel inferior. How could Sheng Youxia have no resentment towards Liang Nianwei? So, she definitely had nothing good to say. She sneered. That's right, she should be humble. Sheng Youxia stood up and wanted to leave. After taking 2 steps, she saw a figure leaning against the door. Fu Shilu stared at her with eyes as cold as a pond, carrying a chilly and oppressive feeling. Sheng Youxia was startled. How come this person appeared like a ghost? Did you hear this? Fu Shilu's jaw tightened. Yes, not a single word was missed. Sheng Youxia asked Ching to go out first. Fu Shilu never looked at Ching from beginning to end, so naturally he would not recognize her face. Sheng Youxia didn't feel guilty at all, she was just telling the truth. The man walked a few steps in and glanced at the zither. You played it on purpose. You want her to feel that nothing can compare to you, right? Sheng Youxia looked at Liang Nianwei, who was surrounded by a group of young men in the crowd. Fu Shilu, I'm not that boring. Her inferiority complex is her business. I am much better than her. Yeah. The man's 2 light words made Sheng Youxia's heart hang in the air. If she had a family background like yours, she could also learn to play the guzheng and open a studio. Did you just say that to rub salt into her wounds? Fu Shilu walked up to her and placed his slender fingers on the guzheng. He plucked a string, and when he released it the sound came out was very sharp, and Liang Nianwei downstairs seemed to be startled. Sheng Youxia didn't endure his sarcasm alone. Then there's nothing we can do. How about you let her be reborn? Sheng Youxia. The surprise in Fu Shilu's eyes was now gone. Don't speak so loudly. If she knew your wife was here, she would be so ashamed. Sheng Youxia picked up the teak box on the table and was about to leave when Fu Shilu stopped her. What brings you here? Anyone with money can come to a place that opens its doors for business. Sheng Youxia had a hint of sarcasm on his brows. I came here with my own money, unlike her. Her words were very choking, and Sheng Youxia watched the man's brows gradually furrowed. He then asked, Did you follow me here? I followed you. You're looking for a chance to embarrass her and show off your superiority, huh? Sheng Youxia took a deep breath and forced herself to be patient. However, the more you endure, the angrier you will be. The more you take a step back, the more you will lose. Fu Shilu, since you love her so much, don't let her suffer. Do you want to divorce me? She thought about this question all the time, but she just said it out loud today. Fu Shilu was not as excited as she had imagined. His eyes were filled with anger. Do you know what you are saying? Do you think this is sudden? It's okay. I can give you some time to think about it. After Sheng Youxia finished speaking, she placed her arm across his chest and pushed him. She walked outside, but unexpectedly the man chased her out. Speak clearly. Sheng Youxia didn't want to get entangled with him here. Sure, Liang Nianwei is downstairs. If you want to make trouble for me, I will call someone. You dare? Why did he like threatening her so much? Sheng Youxia opened her mouth and shouted, Liang. Chapter 27. Beware of the little vixen, she can't hide. Her mouth was covered by Fu Shilu, and the two of them staged an extreme tug of war in the corridor. Liang Nianwei pricked up her ears. Is someone calling me? Ji Xingtang turned his head and was frightened to death. No, no one called you. Why is Sheng Youxia still lingering around? Liang Nianwei felt a little uneasy and reached for the chair next to her. Ji Xingtang didn't even bother playing cards anymore. Shilu will be back soon. Fu Shilu pushed Sheng Youxia against the wall, still exerting force with his palms. The two of them were in a stalemate for a while before he took his hand away and said, "Don't shout." Sheng Youxia found it quite boring, as if her identity had been swapped with Liang Nianwei. No matter how much you don't like me, I'm still your original wife. She should be avoiding me. Fu Shilu looked at her, and Sheng Youxia couldn't suppress the bitterness in her heart and turned her face away. He noticed that she was wearing a pearl necklace today, which didn't match her sweater. She had some problems at the hospital, I just took her out to relax. Explanation is a cover-up, Sheng Youxia is not stupid. Director Fu has so many patients. Can he take care of them all? He is a master of time management. She fixed her hair and left. Sheng Youxia went downstairs, deliberately avoiding Ji Xingtang's gang. Their hibiscus in the yard had been broken into pieces and turned into mud after a night of wind and rain. She walked very fast, as if she was running away. Xia. When Sheng Youxia was called, she still looked a little dazed. When I looked closely, it turned out to be my mother-in-law. Mom. Qin Jin walked out of the room next door and took her hand. You are here too. What a coincidence. Sheng Youxia forced a smile and was pulled into their house by Qin Jin. I am here to accompany Grandpa to watch the opera. Are you here to have fun? Is Shilu here? Sheng Youxia saw Mr. Fu sitting in the private room. Mom, he should be in the hospital. He's busy. She hurried over to greet him, Grandpa. When the old man saw that she was happy, all the wrinkles on his face opened up with a smile. Sheng Youxia had just sat down when she heard her mother-in-law's phone call from behind her. Where are you, Shilu? I'm at Washing Hospital and want to see you. Sheng Youxia really admired Qin Jin's ability to speak in a set of words. Sure enough, the person on the other end of the phone fell into the trap. Mom, I'm taking a break today. I'll sit in Zhuyan building for a while. Qin Jin said, what a coincidence, Grandpa and I are here too. Are you coming to find us, or am I coming to find you? Fu Shilu naturally couldn't let Qin Jin and Liang Nianwei meet. I'll come over. Well, be quick. Sheng Youxia was being talked to by the old man and couldn't leave for a while. When Fu Shilu came over, his eyes changed as soon as he saw her. She was really unlucky today. He would probably think that she was the one who reported her. Mom, Grandpa. Fu Shilu walked up to the group with his long legs. Shilu, you rarely get a rest, why don't you spend time with your wife? Qin Jin looked displeased. Fu Shilu was quite shameless, I didn't accompany her at all. We came to Zhuyan building together. Qin Jin was skeptical and looked at Sheng Youxia. She was concerned about the old man's health, afraid that something might happen and make him angry. Mom, we are together. Qin Jin didn't believe it at all, but still pulled his son to Sheng Youxia aside. You know it's right to accompany your wife. The show will start soon, so sit down and don't run around. Sheng Youxia was angry and didn't want to see him. She turned her face away from the door. The open foyer faced the stage in the center of the courtyard, but the actors had not yet come on stage. The old man kicked Fu Shilu and said, "You're just like a fool." Fu Shilu glanced at the footprints on his trousers and suppressed his anger. Grandpa, what do you want me to do? Pour tea for Xia and peel melon seeds. Do you still need me to teach you? When Sheng Youxia heard this, he quickly refused, fearing that drinking his tea would shorten his life. Grandpa, I'm not thirsty, I'm not hungry, and I don't have that blessing. Fu Shilu reached out to pour tea, and her words seemed to suggest that she was trying to stir up trouble. He glanced at her sideways, with a warning tone. Seeing this, Sheng Youxia rushed forward to pick up the teapot, poured the tea, and then held the teacup with both hands and respectfully handed it to Fu Shilu. The man raised his brow. The old man was immediately unhappy. Xia, I'll ask him to pour it for you. Grandpa, I usually do these things, and I'm used to it. The old man moved on the recliner, as if he wanted to sit up. Why do you marry a wife? It's for you to love her. Do you need a servant at home? Sheng Youxia heard from Qin Jin that the old man loved his wife dearly, and when Grandma was alive, he was the one who combed her hair. Fu Shilu took the teacup, put his arm around Sheng Youxia's waist, and brought the rim of the cup to her lips. I didn't do well enough before. I will definitely learn from it in the future. Mrs. Fu, please have some tea. Sheng Youxia took a big gulp. Qin Jin was sitting opposite, observing what was wrong between the two. If you want to feed it well. Do you have a grudge against Xia? After Sheng Youxia swallowed the tea, he coughed twice. She broke free from Fu Shilu's hand, and the man's slender fingers pinched the teacup and put it back on the table. Fu Shilu couldn't quite see through her now. When she said the word divorce just now, it didn't sound like she was joking at all. Did you have a fight? Qin Jin blew the hot air out of the cup. Sheng Youxia really didn't want to pretend to be in love with Fu Shilu. Thinking that Liang Nianwei was still waiting for him, she couldn't pretend at all. She didn't say anything, which meant it was. Shilu, what did you do that was too much? Fu Shilu was also wondering what had happened that made Sheng Youxia have such thoughts. Speak, the old man shouted angrily. Fu Shilu clasped his hands together, his whole body was chilly. She said she wanted to divorce me. The teacup in Qin Jin's hand shook twice. Divorce. Sheng Youxia turned her head away quickly, eyes full of disbelief. He actually said that in front of the parents. Wasn't this just bringing blame to her? It's not a dog. Xia, have you been wronged? Tell Grandpa and I will help you. The old man was extremely anxious. Fu Shilu was sure that she was worried about her grandfather, so she didn't dare to say anything, leaving her with no way to express her grievances. Sheng Youxia brushed away a strand of hair on the side of her cheek with her palm. Grandpa, I saw Shilu bringing another woman out today, and I feel like I can't live like this anymore. Her words also took Fu Shilu by surprise. His face was visibly cold. Sheng Youxia, what nonsense are you talking about? Oh. Anxious? Scared? Afraid that his little white rabbit could no longer be hidden and that the Fu family would pull it out and give it a good beating? Sheng Youxia's lips were stained with tea, and the color of her lips was extremely dark. She gently lifted it up. Qin Jin immediately thought of the figure on the cruise ship. Xia, who is that person? Tell us, or I'll break one of her legs right now. The old man was furious and added, why keep the other one? Interrupt them all. Fu Shilu's eyes were enough to eat Sheng Youxia alive. Chapter 28. No one is allowed to bully her. To be honest, Sheng Youxia was very touched to see the two men protecting her like this. Her parents-in-law and grandfather treat her better than her biological father. Mom, calm down. Sheng Youxia certainly couldn't let the situation continue to develop. I was also very angry when I saw it, and argued with him for a long time, but soon found out that it was a misunderstanding. That was one of Shilu's former patients. She was thanking him for curing her eyes. I was just being overly suspicious. After hearing this, the old man looked much more relaxed. But this won't fool my mother-in-law. But she still stepped out to smooth things over. It was Shilu who didn't handle it well. It was his fault. Fu Shilu grabbed a handful of pistachios and started peeling them one by one. The actor appeared on stage, wearing a dragon robe and a square-winged gauze hat. Qin Jin thought it was very appropriate for the scene. The play is called Chen Shimai and Qin Xianglian. Fu Shilu felt a little annoyed and took out a box of cigarettes. His fingers were long and slender, with distinct phalanges, and his right hand, which was used to holding a scalpel, took out a cigarette. When Liang Nianwei was around, he never smoked and didn't let others smoke. Sheng Youxia pushed his shoulder coquettishly. Aren't you preparing for pregnancy? You forgot again. Fu Shilu looked at her and finally put the cigarette back. The old man felt much better when he heard the words, preparing for pregnancy. Fu Shilu grabbed the pistachio on the table and continued to peel it. He didn't like listening to opera and it was really boring sitting here. He quickly gathered a handful of fruit pulp in his palm. Sheng Youxia was looking outside at the moment and did not notice the hand extended by the man. Fu Shilu nudged her with his elbow. Under the stares of the other two, Sheng Youxia had no choice but to take the pistachio meat. The housekeeper of the courtyard happened to pass by here. When he saw Sheng Youxia, he walked in and greeted her. So you've reserved a seat here to watch the opera. Sheng Youxia stood up and said, my mom and grandpa like to listen to opera, and I am here to keep them company. This housekeeper only manages this small piece of land, and he doesn't interact much with people in that circle on weekdays. She didn't recognize Qin Jin and the old man, but nodded to them politely. I'll arrange for someone to bring in a fruit plate and a pot of good tea. Sheng Youxia was naturally embarrassed. No need, we have already ordered. You are a distinguished guest, this is a small token of my appreciation. Fu Shilu sat there until the man turned around and left, and Sheng Youxia didn't introduce him at all, as if he was a superfluous person. Qin Jin took a sip of the warm tea and asked, Xia, do you know each other? Sheng Youxia hummed, he is my client, then. Fu Shilu wondered why she had left him out. Logically, as a husband, he should be introduced to his grandfather and mother. Xia is amazing. Your studio's business scope is quite broad. Sheng Youxia felt a little embarrassed by the compliment. Mom, I just did it out of interest. Fu Shilu was thinking, she is the young mistress of the Fu family. This identity will be useful no matter where she is. When my grandfather heard this, he thought that this person's emotional intelligence was terrible. Xia relies on herself. Other women try to curry favor with you because they have other intentions, but Xia is the only one who doesn't do that. If he knows what's best for him, he shouldn't say anything bad about Sheng Youxia in front of them. It's not allowed. Sheng Youxia knew that he just looked down on her in every way. She played the Guzheng well because her family was rich, and she ran her studio well because others gave face to the Fu family. He just likes people like Liang Nianwei who can't do anything but open their mouths to eat. Stupid X. Sheng Youxia still held the fruit flesh in her palm. She didn't eat a single bite and found an opportunity to throw it all into the trash can. Fu Shilu's cell phone rang several times. It must be someone urging him to come back. It was not convenient for him to go over there at this time, so he sent a message to Jixingtan, I met my grandfather here, I will come to find you after the opera. The old man listened to the opera for the whole afternoon, and they accompanied him for the whole afternoon. After the show, the old man was satisfied and prepared to go back. Sheng Youxia glanced at the man next to her. His expression relaxed. He must have been thinking that he could finally go and accompany Liang Nianwei. Unexpectedly, an arm suddenly wrapped around him. Grandpa, Mom, Shilu and I will treat you to dinner. The old man was eager to do so. Okay, as long as you don't find it boring to take me with you. He glanced at his eldest grandson and asked, do you mind? Fu Shilu should have thought that Sheng Youxia was not a good person and it was impossible for her to do anything good for him. When going to the restaurant, he asked Sheng Youxia to get in his car. As soon as the car door closed, Fu Shilu's expression became serious, this is the only trick you can pull off. Sheng Youxia fastened her seat belt with a click. If she continued like this, she would soon develop a physique that was immune to all poisons. Is it a trick for me to accompany your mother and grandfather for dinner? Do you want me to be an unfilial daughter-in-law? Fu Shilu's cell phone rang again. He didn't answer, and the ringtone echoed in the narrow space. It must be Liang Nianwei. You should answer it quickly, otherwise she will be so stubborn and wait for you. How pitiful. If looks could kill, Fu Shilu would have gouged her out. He raised his hand and tapped the screen of his mobile phone, and sure enough, a female voice came out. Shilu, where are you? He called me so kindly. I have something urgent to do. I'll ask Jixingtan to take you back. Liang Nianwei was the most gentle and considerate, and her tone of voice was different from others. Are you okay? I'm worried about you. Sheng Youxia looked out the window and saw a Kia car following not far behind. When she came to her senses, the two men had still been on the phone. I'm fine. I'll tell Jixingtan to take you to dinner first. If it had happened before, Fu Shilu would have died long ago. But when he glanced at Sheng Youxia's face out of the corner of his eye, he saw that she had no reaction at all. He originally thought that she would be so jealous that she would go crazy and smash his phone. Don't bother them. I'll just go back to the hospital and eat. Fu Shilu held the steering wheel with one hand, the muscles on the back of his hand were quite overbearing. What delicious food can there be in the hospital? Liang Nianwei chuckled, her voice like a gentle breeze, I ate a lot of cakes and fruits this afternoon, I'm actually full. Sheng Youxia held the phone in her hand, and the indifference on her face didn't seem fake. She was ordering on her phone so she wouldn't have to wait when she got there. Seeing how focused she was, Fu Shilu knew that Qin Jin didn't eat coriander, so he made a note of it on the menu. Fu Shilu suddenly felt very bored because she didn't seem to care at all. Okay, then go back and get some rest. Liang Nianwei seemed stunned. Fu Shilu ended the call, and Sheng Youxia had almost finished ordering the dishes. She raised her head and smiled at him. I did a good job, didn't I? I didn't say a word. She still looked nonchalant. Actually, how is that possible? But it was all pretend. She just pretended so many times that it became more and more realistic. Chapter 29. How would you rate this figure? During dinner, the young couple pretended to be nice, at least making Grandpa feel that their relationship was stable. At the dinner table, Fu Shilu's cell phone kept ringing. Sheng Youxia was sitting next to him and could clearly see him replying to other people's WeChat messages. It showed in TB Liang Nianwei. It's not that convenient for a blind person to send messages. She noticed the profile picture, which was a black moon, and the WeChat name was 2 Lines of Tears in Dreams. The man sent a photo, and Sheng Youxia only had time to take a quick glance at it. It looks like a person lying on a hospital bed. Shilu, are you so busy during mealtime? Qin Jin saw that he was still holding the phone. Fu Shilu didn't even raise his head. Mom, it's about the hospital. There's an operation tomorrow. Sheng Youxia couldn't see the specific content clearly, so she took this opportunity to move towards Fu Shilu and said, Hubby, do you want to drink some wine? She quickly scanned the screen of her phone. She was very good at finding keywords and immediately saw the 3 words, cornea. Fu Shilu paused slightly as he replied to the message, his tone quite gentle. Need not. Grandpa wants to drink some rice wine, how about you have one too? Sheng Youxia saw another half-line of words, which seemed to say that the family was preparing to notify relatives and ask them to come and see him for the last time. I'm not going to drink anymore. I have surgery tomorrow. Fu Shilu turned off the screen and put the phone back on the table. Sheng Youxia went back without leaving a trace. She had planted several people in the hospital, but the whereabouts of that person has not been found yet. Could it be that Fu Shilu hid him? For the sake of Liang Nianwei, he was willing to spend a lot of money. After dinner, Sheng Youxia saw the Kir again on their way back. She took note and wrote down the license plate number. She sent a message to Tang Hui, help me check this license plate. The other side quickly replied, no problem. When a man gets home, he takes a shower, takes off his watch, and puts it on the bedside table together with his cell phone. Sheng Youxia looked over and was caught by Fu Shilu. Curious about my phone. Sheng Youxia looked away nonchalantly. What's the password for your phone's lock screen? What? He suspected that he had heard it wrongly. As a couple, the least you can do is not look at your phone as you like, right? Fu Shilu took out the belt from around his waist, wrapped it around one hand, and looked down at Sheng Youxia who was sitting on the edge of the bed. So how much is yours? For 78387. Fu Shilu raised one eyebrow, and Sheng Youxia saw that he didn't believe it, so she handed the phone to him. He entered the password with his finger and it was unlocked. Just as Fu Shilu was about to click in, Sheng Youxia held his wrist and asked, where's yours? 6 sixes. She had been guessing and trying to crack it, but she didn't expect it to be such a stupid password. Fu Shilu moved to the side and entered Sheng Youxia's WeChat. He slid his finger down, mainly to see if there were any suspicious men with profile pictures. Sheng Youxia grabbed Fu Shilu's phone, entered 6 sixes, and was full of anticipation. Unexpectedly, the unlocking failed. She tried again without giving up, but still got the same error. Sheng Youxia was fooled. She stood up and walked to Fu Shilu, give me back my phone. Let's wait and see. How can you, as a director, lie to others? Fu Shilu raised his arms higher, and Sheng Youxia had to hold onto his arms. The two struggled for it, and finally Fu Shilu held her hands and held her tightly in his arms. Who is this person? Fu Shilu clicked on a WeChat profile picture. The name was quite funny, Sadness is Wandering. Sheng Youxia watched him open the dialog box. It was a client she had contacted last week. She had long forgotten him in some corner and didn't know how Fu Shilu had found him. The final content of the conversation was a picture of abdominal muscles. To be exact, it was a whole belly, but the man was a bit narcissistic about it and asked her, how would you rate this figure? Sheng Youxia didn't reply to him at that time, but forgot to block him. Fu Shilu narrowed his eyes slightly and turned his fingers upwards. I heard you sell perfume. Do you have a woman scent on you? Sheng Youxia rarely comes across such weird clients. She remembers that after the conversation that day, she felt nauseous for the whole day. It turns out that there are so many secrets in your phone. Sheng Youxia was not afraid that he would see these, but she was afraid that Tang Hui would suddenly send him a message. Give it back to me. Fu Shilu saw her flushed face and her expression of nervousness that she couldn't hide, and in his eyes, she was guilty. What kind of business are you negotiating with others? Sheng Youxia, you might as well quit. It's not that the Fu family can't afford to support you. Sheng Youxia opened her mouth to bite him hard, but Fu Shilu pushed her onto the bed. If she had dared to say something like, "You have a nice figure," that day, Fu Shilu would have torn her to pieces. Sheng Youxia climbed out of bed, knowing that she would be no match for her opponent if she tried to take the fight by force. She just pretended to be calm and composed, brushing her long hair with her hand. "Are you jealous? You're quite a dreamer." Sheng Youxia smiled, looking quite confident. "Look, if this isn't caring, then what is it? Do you mind every man who talks to me? Fu Shilu, something's wrong with you. Are you falling in love with me?" Her cell phone came flying over and fell limply onto the quilt. "You really hope that I will care about you?" Sheng Youxia took the phone and finally made up her mind. "You can't afford to play with me. If you give me a wrong password, you must be guilty." Fu Shilu raised his hand to unbutton two buttons and pulled the hem of his shirt out from his trousers. The room was kept at a constant temperature, so he wouldn't feel cold even with his upper body naked. Sheng Youxia glanced at him. Her shoulders were as sharp as a knife, her waist was as thin as a stick, and her body was so attractive that it was fatal. "I just won't show it to you. Are you angry?" Sheng Youxia didn't want to pay any attention to him. After Fu Shilu went into the bathroom to take a shower, Tang Hui called. She quickly came to the balcony and lowered her voice. "Is there news so soon? Don't you see who I am?" However, Tang Hui's words were filled with worry. "Xia, the car following you belongs to Liang Nianwei's brother. He's not trying to kidnap you, is he?" Sheng Youxia frowned. "His brother doesn't have a proper job. He set up a snack stand next to Yinshan Primary School. Help me find a few people to smash his stand." Tang Hui said okay and didn't ask any more questions. "Leave it to me." When she went to bed at night, Sheng Youxia lay with her eyes open, and the man beside her gradually fell asleep with steady and even breathing. She waited for a while, and after making sure he was fast asleep, she raised her upper body. She took Fu Shilu's phone and groped the man's hand in the dark. It didn't matter if there was no password, as she could unlock it with her fingerprint. Sheng Youxia was very nervous. After the screen was unlocked, she quickly turned around and hid under the quilt. She found the WeChat account of, clicked on it, forwarded the photos sent by the other party to her own mobile phone, and then deleted the records. The person next to him suddenly turned over. She was so scared that she quit WeChat, and then a hand came over and held her while touching her phone. Chapter 30. I want to send her a bed photo. Sheng Youxia's breathing was short and her heart was pounding. She hoped Fu Shilu wouldn't wake up. But the man's voice sounded very clear in my ears. "What is this?" He forcibly took the phone and stretched his arm out of the quilt. The mobile phone screen was turned on, and the bright light revealed a guilty face, her complexion looking as white as jade. "Do you want to give me an explanation?" Fu Shilu sat up from the bed and turned on the light in the room. The overwhelming intimidation made Sheng Youxia unable to speak. "What are you doing with my phone?" "I want to send Liang Nianwei our bed photos." Fu Shilu glared at him. "You really can do anything." Sheng Youxia admired herself for being able to find such an excuse. "This is so satisfying for me." "She can't see. I'm afraid your efforts will be in vain." Sheng Youxia saw him put the phone back on the bedside table, probably not thinking about anything else. Her mother will pass on the message. Once she sees our intimate photos, she might directly refuse you any contact. After hearing her evil thoughts, Fu Shilu did not feel angry at all. She is just that kind of person, with a pretty face and a vicious heart. "I've told you more than once, don't put your mind on her." She lay back down in bed and turned her back to the man. "Then tell her to stay away from me and not appear in front of me. Out of sight, out of mind. Otherwise, there can't be two tigers in one mountain." She already had resentment towards Liang Nianwei, and she would definitely find ways to vent her anger when she gets the chance. She walked her own sunny path, but in a situation like today, no matter Liang Nianwei did it intentionally or unintentionally, Sheng Youxia wanted to kick her off the single plank bridge. Sheng Youxia has to take medicine every day. She wants to make sure her eyes stay healthy as long as possible. In the hospital, Liang Songlian couldn't control his anger. Liang's mother pressed against the door tightly. "Be gentle, what are you doing?" Liang Songlian walked over, pushed her out of the ward door, and locked it. Liang Nianwei sat on the edge of the bed, with no fear on her face. For 3 consecutive days, my store was smashed. They were targeting me. I can't make a single cent now. Brother, just smash it, go do something else first. It's easy for you to say that, am I waiting to starve to death? Liang Nianwei put her hands to the side and gently scratched the bed sheet. I'm going to have surgery soon. I don't want to be blind for the rest of my life. Brother, I don't want any problems to occur at this critical moment. Liang Songlian looked at his rough hands. He is really stupid. How can he get rich by frying skewers? Since there is a better path in front of him now, why doesn't he take it? When Liang Songlian sat opposite Sheng Youxia, he couldn't help but look at her a few more times. This woman is so beautiful. He thought Fu Shilu might be blind. You specially asked me out, what's the matter? Sheng Youxia remained calm, even a little impatient. Have you got the money to buy the incense? Do rich girls always speak so harshly? Liang Songlian sneered, yes, I will soon have a lot of money. Then congratulations. Liang Songlian handed an envelope to Sheng Youxia. She pretended to be confused, but still took out the photos. Then, Sheng Youxia was surprised, who are you? What do you want to do? I'll get straight to the point. I'm Liang Nianwei's brother. 5 million. You buy out these photos, or I'll post them online. Sheng Youxia quickly said no, and her arrogance was instantly suppressed. People have always thought that you and your husband are very loving, right? You don't want others to laugh at you, do you? She held the photo nervously, took a sip of water, and suppressed her panic. In the picture, Liang Nianwei was sitting on the bed, and Fu Shilu was leaning over to her, probably checking her eyes. But from this candid angle, it looks like a kiss. Sheng Youxia looked at the picture quality of the photo and it seemed like a screenshot from a surveillance camera. He actually installed surveillance cameras in his own sister's ward for money? Is this enough? Sheng Youxia could tell at a glance that this was a substitution, but she held the photo tightly, wishing she could crush it to pieces. Liang Songlian was very proud. He took a sip of coffee and said, Par, it tastes so bad. How is it? Is it worth 5 million? Sheng Youxia put away all the photos and asked, are you asking for too much? Don't pretend. Can you come up with the money? I'll give you 3 days to think about it. Otherwise, you and your husband will be on the headlines. Liang Songlian pushed the chair away and walked away. Sheng Youxia's tense expression relaxed a little bit. She took a sip of coffee, the corners of her mouth slightly raised. After she finished eating, she drove to Washing Hospital. You have to grab Director Fu's number 1 week in advance. When the girls at the nurses' station saw her, each one was more enthusiastic than the other. Everyone knows that Sheng Youxia is a beautiful and kind person. Look, the nurses' table is already full of food. Sheng Youxia was leaning against the door of the expert room with a cup of coffee in hand. A patient came out, and Fu Shilu raised his eyes while waiting for the next patient. He immediately saw Sheng Youxia. She wore a pair of long boots and a waist-length short coat, which made her waistline more perfect. Sheng Youxia suspected that she had a bit of a uniform fetish. She liked to see Fu Shilu wearing a white coat and gold-rimmed glasses, a complete beast in human clothing. The patient next to her was about to go in, but Sheng Youxia stopped her. Hello, please bring a cup of coffee to Director Fu. Good. After the patient walked in, he put the coffee on the table and said, Director Fu, your girlfriend is so beautiful. Fu Shilu retracted his gaze and asked, where do you feel uncomfortable? My eyes have been. There was a window behind the man, and light shone in unscrupulously from outside, making Fu Shilu's outline appear particularly soft. When he was treating patients, he was always more gentle than when he was with her. Sheng Youxia laughed at herself. Fu Shilu helped so many people regain their light, but he wanted to snatch her light away. In the morning, the last patient walked out, and Sheng Youxia stood up, rubbing his legs that were numb from sitting. She walked in, and Fu Shilu was a little surprised when he saw her. You haven't left yet. I want to have lunch with you. Sheng Youxia came to the man's desk. His desk was clean. In addition to the computer and pen holder, there were some medical records. Fu Shilu took the meal card from the drawer. Walk. My legs are numb from sitting so much, I don't want to move. And there are too many people in your cafeteria. How about I wait for you here and you pack it up for me? Fu Shilu looked at her without hiding anything. Whether you want to eat or not, you should go out and order it yourself. It is said that women who act coquettishly have the best life. Sheng Youxia thought she could learn from her. She stood on tiptoe and kissed the man on the corner of his mouth when he was not paying attention. Hubby, just agree to it.